Thank you. Good evening, everyone. It's January 26, 2016, and this is a regular scheduled meeting of the Middlebury Select Board. And the first order of business would be to approve the minutes from our last meeting of January 12th. Any suggested corrections or changes in those minutes?
I have
Susan.
Line 86, the motion carried with 6 members in favor and 1 opposed.
Yes, correct.
Yes, you
I
opposed it.
yes.
Good catch.
I didn't want to name names.
Yeah.
Yes. No. Thank you. Any other suggested corrections or changes to the minutes? Do I have a motion?
Your motion.
Make the motions that the minutes of the select board stand approved as written. Oh, as amended, excuse me,
As
sorry.
amended. Thank you. Is there a second?
Second.
Motion's been made by Susan and seconded by Brian to approve the minutes as amended. Those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? We are 7 in favor and none opposed. Approval of the agenda. I don't believe we have anything to add. We do have a need for a brief executive session for a legal matter to consider later tonight. Anyone have anything that they have that they need to discuss about the agenda?
Could I request to get a few minutes on there?
Apart from the Public Works Committee meeting,
Yeah, I think so.
how about under citizen comments? First up,
We can start there.
okay? If there's nothing to add, then the motion would be to approve the agenda for tonight.
Moved.
Moved by Laura, seconded by Donna. Any further discussion? Those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. We are 7 in favor and none opposed. Citizen comments, and Travis, if you want to come up to the desk, we'll start with you.
It's Travis and Tori.
I'm sorry, Susan?
It's Travis and Tori.
It's Travis and Tori. Thank you.
Did the same thing.
So, we got our testing back from our core samples for the sidewalks. And we went to the Public Works Committee with them. They came back at 3,830 pounds. The engineer wrote a note on here that says it should be considered adequate if the core strength is equal to at least 85% of the specified strength. And he signed it and all that, and I talked to him about writing a letter to bring here and explain to you guys that it's adequate, but he told me today that it can't really get much more straightforward than that. So I've been on the internet. I printed off a bunch of information here. I got some from National Ready Mix, Concrete Association, ASTM International, American Concrete Institute, American Society of Concrete Core Testing, and Testing Engineers. And you know, you could read 100 different things, 100 different places, and it all amounts to the same. So anyway, reading through all this, and reading through this one is the University of Wisconsin, came to the best conclusion that I could find. And I'll read it to you when I find it. So this explains all the core testing, how they do it and everything. And it says, the conclusion is that when a core is tested, the indicated strength is always lower than an equivalent test cylinder, which means the ones that the engineers took in the beginning. In addition, more importantly, as the strength level goes up, the reduction goes up. So that means if we were testing 5,000, 6,000 pound concrete, then the core test should be even less, than the ratio should be different. Actually, core strength is allowed to be 15% lower than the cylinder strength, not only in the US code, but also Canada, Germany, India, Finland allows up to 15%, and Norway allows 30%, but whatever. I'd also like to read you this little thing here. It's kind of in the same situation we are. It says, at first, there was a lot of excitement over a high-profile project your ready mix company was so proud to have a part in. Then came the bad news. The cylinder comprehensive strength test results are low. The contractor, which would be the town, is blaming your company. He claims it was bad concrete. You think otherwise. To aid the investigation, cores will be taken and tested. Knowing the in-place characteristics of concrete and how they affect the measured comprehensive strengths of the cores can go a long way toward establishing that the low-strength cylinders were not the result of bad concrete. So our cores came back at 3,830 pounds. That's a difference of 170 pounds from the design strength specified.
Mm-hmm.
170 pounds equals roughly 4%. And the world is allowing 15%. So, if the cores were 15% lower than what the concrete actually is, it would have made the concrete 4,400 plus pounds. In the Public Works meeting, they discussed it. I don't think that we got a fair chance to explain ourselves. Every direction I tried to go, it was just no.
So in tonight's agenda, Travis, there is the report from the Public Works Committee, which I presume will cover part of that discussion.
I've read all of it, yeah.
Okay, so I don't know where the board is going to go on that, but if you want to provide us with copies of that material and hang around for that part of the meeting, obviously, I think it would be in your best interest, but that's up to you.
Yeah, I plan on staying, so.
Okay,
I mean, it's been 5 months now, my money's been tied up.
okay, all right.
We gotta get this solved.
Okay, so we're going to be bringing that up. We'll make that the first item in our reports, part of the committee
Okay.
projects, okay?
Sure.
So you're saying 15% in U.S., Canada, Germany, Finland, all good, credible countries on doing good engineering.
Well, if you read one of these, it's an international
It's international.
thing.
Do you know where that comes from? Do you have any idea? Did you ever find anything that gave along as to why they give that variance?
Well, in here, actually, if you read some of these, it goes into pretty good detail of
Mm-hmm.
why the cores break lower. A lot of it, what I gathered, is how they're drilled. Sometimes they get a line around the circumference of it, and that
Okay.
creates a weak spot.
Okay.
I think the most of it is when they drill it, it's actually fracturing the surface of the concrete,
Okay.
and it's fracturing the aggregates, your stone and stuff that's in there. So,
Okay. Okay. So there's a logic to that.
and
Yeah.
I mean, it tells you in here that it could be the way the cylinders were casted, or the way they were transported and handled, or broke, or anything. So,
But the industry and ASTM and American Society of Concrete and all that, they were already taking that into account when
Yep.
they set these standards in the first place.
it's all right here.
Okay.
I mean, I could get you 100 more things from different places if you wanted them.
Sounds like that might create an unsafe fire load in this building. Well, okay, that's
Good.
Good, thanks. I can look at that.
So that'll be part of the Public Works Committee discussion coming up a little bit later, and
Okay.
we'll follow up.
You guys want some copies of these? I didn't make any because I didn't know how far I'd get with it.
Well, let's wait and see. We probably will, when we're done tonight, have copies. That'd be great.
Mhm.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Any other citizen comments before we proceed? Yes, Ross?
Yeah, Ross Conrad. On my way over here, I was just wondering if the board could tell me, is there plans this year, and is there money in the budget to do any repair work on the sidewalks in downtown Middlebury on Main Street between the Fountain and Cannon Park?
I think Dan will be joining us later, Ross, and he could tell you what our areas are targeted this year.
Okay, I can, as long as it's all right
Yeah.
to bring it up then.
Oh, sure.
But, did you say between Main Street and?
On Main
Cannon Park?
Street, basically between like the bank and down through.
Okay.
Both sides.
Some on both sides, yeah.
I know there was some work done 2 years ago
Yeah,
on one
that was
side.
just one
Yeah.
section.
On the
Yeah.
bridge.
Yeah. Okay, we'll hold that off then until Dan's here. Anything else, citizen comments? Okay, first item up on our agenda is the annual Middlebury College application for a blanket approval to serve liquor at catered events. And this would be to consider approving the college's request to serve alcohol at their catered events from May 1st, 2016 to April 30th, 2017. Dan, do you have anything you want to add to that? Is there any changes from the last?
No,
Many years?
No, it's just on catered events, and
Okay.
it's all been running smoothly, so.
Okay. Any questions from the board on that? Pleasure of the board for that first item.
Well, it's been ongoing, it's worked fine, and has no reluctance to it, so I'd say we make a motion to approve the college's request for blanket approval to serve liquor at catered events at Middlebury College from May 1, 2016 through April 30, 2017.
Second.
Motion's made by Nick and seconded by Brian. Any further discussion? Those in favor of approving that motion, number one, for the blanket approval for the college's request for serving alcohol at catered events, those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? In favor. And then the second issue is to approve a letter to the Department of Liquor Control authorizing our town clerk, Ann Webster, to sign an approved liquor license, all the applications on behalf of the Select Board. And again, this is the process we've used for the last several years to sort of streamline having the board to go through and sign each one of these documents individually.
So I'll move to approve the letter to the Vermont Liquor Control Board authorizing town clerk Ann Webster to sign those liquor licenses
I'll second that.
That have been approved by the Select Board. Right.
that we've approved.
Motion's made by Brian and seconded by Nick to approve that motion. Any further discussion on it? Those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? There are 7 in favor and none opposed. Thank you. And next up is the catering request to serve alcohol at the Memorial Sports Center parking lot following the Face-Off Against Breast Cancer fundraiser on January 30th. And I know Chris Bowdish and Holmes Jacobs are here for part of that. We also received some late notice this afternoon from the chair of the ID4 board, Ruth Hardy, notifying us that it is against school policy to have alcohol on the premises of school property, which that essentially is. It's leased to the town for recreation purposes, but there is that policy. There was also mention in the correspondence about there is a small parcel of property to the south of the parking lot that is owned by the town where something like that could be used potentially. I don't know if either of you have any updates on that you want to offer or suggest. Come on up.
Sure. Yeah, at the time of the original application, I wasn't aware that the property was school property. So we've made adjustments, and we'll be moving our celebration to that dirt area, the south end of the parking lot, which is in the town and not in the school property.
So that's the section just below the hard surface road?
Yep.
Yeah,
Where they
okay.
pile stuff up. and
Yeah.
things, yeah.
Yep, so we've made those adjustments.
So there's plenty of room for the tent there. And,
Yes,
okay. So you want to proceed with the application but change the location.
correct.
Okay. Any questions for Chris?
Good cause, good people setting it up.
I have a
There it is.
Gary?
observation. Alcohol consumption is not supposed to be good for women, particularly in view of breast cancer. Is this the kind of message you want to send?
It's kind of on the spot question.
Well, I'm sorry.
We're not really advocating one way or the other for the use of alcohol and its ties to breast cancer, but we are celebrating, the fact that we've raised $500,000 in the course of our tournament, and that's kind of what we're focusing on.
You think you'll raise more if you're serving alcohol?
Not necessarily. All of our funds are raised through our players on the teams, so The event really is meant as a celebration, not really as a fundraising. It goes along with the event.
I'll lay off the whole.
Holmes?
It's just to be clear, there is no money generated for the cause from alcohol sales.
Right.
Right. Okay. And Holmes, you're okay with that change of location? That works for you?
Yeah, we're here to help in any way we can.
Okay.
Certainly not meant to complicate things, but if we can help make the event stronger in any way, that should be fine. And I put on the application the parking lot at Memorial Rink. Do you
Yeah,
think that's
I
specific
thought from
enough?
I thought from your application that it was actually on the town property. And
Oh,
then
okay.
I guess it's the public assemblage that said it's west of the pool, and then that's where it all got questioned.
Yeah. So that's been changed on the application then? Or-
Not
The,
on
the permit says in the parking lot at Memorial Sports Center, I could.
Okay.
The catering one does.
Okay,
Yeah.
so there's no need to change it then? Okay.
I don't know if you want anything changed on the public assemblage. or-
We can take care of that with Chris.
I'm glad we worked something out.
Yeah,
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 it's
yeah,
nice.
yeah.
I think it's good to allow this event to go forward, and
Mm.
I think it's really good.
Okay.
And I thought it was good of the school too, to say that, saying no to this doesn't mean that they're saying no to everything in the
yes,
future,
right.
that
Yeah.
they're willing to talk about that,
Yeah.
so.
Any other thoughts from the board? Pleasure of the board?
Move approval.
Okay.
do you want to, I can make the motion to approve the catering request from Two Brothers Tavern to serve alcohol in the Memorial Sports Center parking lot as part of the Face Off Against Breast Cancer fundraiser on Saturday, January 30th, 2016.
The motion's made by Susan and seconded by Gary. Any further discussion? Those in favor of the motion then signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? I'm sorry, we have 6 in favor and 1 abstention. Laura? Thank you. Thank you both. Cruiser bids. Chief Hanley's going to tell us about his recommendations.
He's talking at the moment.
He's busy.
He's in conflict.
You're up.
Yeah.
Okay, we had a couple of good bids come in for our cruisers from Foster Motors and from G Stones. We had a bid from a dealer in Massachusetts, but I would just waive that because they didn't meet the bid specifications. Calls for a 2016 or latest model, and that is not the latest model, and it's 2 years old. So, and it was a high bid. We were seeking bids, or if anybody put out bids for a hybrid type vehicle for investigator use. Typically for the investigator, they get one of the hand-me-down police cars, and it's a very weary car. So we looked at this time if we could do something different, something a little more efficient, fuel efficient, something a little more discreet for an investigator to use based on the kind of, the victims they deal with all the time, moving them around or transporting them. And we got a very good bid from G Stones on a C-Max hybrid at $18,585. We intend to keep the car in service for 8 years. It does have an 8-year warranty on the battery. So we were pretty pleased. 100,000 miles, 18 years, and 8 years, I'm sorry. And that should be sufficient for that. And that would have been the low bid for the unmarked car. For the police cruiser, both the Ford Interceptor and the Dodge Charger meet specifications. They're both serviceable. They were both very close in the bids. A few $100s separated the two bids. We currently have a number of Chargers in the fleet now. The SUV vehicle came out quite a bit higher than everything else. We specified also to deal with the winter issues, all-wheel drive as our preference. And both the Charger and the Ford Interceptor were all-wheel drive. So both bids are acceptable. Looking over the hybrid vehicle, we've gone through the specs in and out. Christine and I, who would be the actual one assigned to that car, has looked at that, and it seems to be it would be satisfactory for service for the kind of use that that car would get. So there we have it. We've got the two vehicles. We discussed at an earlier meeting, perhaps both dealers, we have local dealers here in town that have bid these, both provided sufficient bids for us. They're serviceable vehicles. They're very close in bids. They're both acceptable for service.
Do you have any preferences?
I don't have a specific preference. The Chargers have been good serviceable vehicles.
Mhm.
I was a little bit concerned with the Ford Interceptor due to it was on a Taurus platform. It's a little bigger than that now. It's not the Crown Vic, the full-size car that used to be. So I'm perfectly happy with the Charger, as it's a competitive bid. And as I say, we've got a number in service that have been fine, but we're pleased with.
Questions from the board?
I have a question.
Gary?
I have a couple of questions. Are they ready to go, ready for service, or do you have to do some additions on either one of them?
There's aftermarket work we have to do on all the cars. What happens is the back seats are taken out of the cars, and we put a fabricated compartment in the back and get rid of the back seats. Then there's the radio equipment and the radio tree that's got to go in. The light bar's got to go in. I don't know at this time, and Dick is here, and perhaps he can answer the question, is some of the equipment transferable between model years, and I don't know that.
Should be.
There hasn't been any significant,
No, there hasn't been any significant changes.
which is a big money saver. To buy all new equipment is a couple of $1,000s for the back seat, the barrier. If we can transfer from one of the existing Chargers that will be coming out of service, it saves us a couple of $1,000s on the upfit of the car.
But you wouldn't be outfitting the investigator's car the same
No.
way?
It'd be, the radios would be put in the radio gear and
Okay.
more discreet emergency light, but it wouldn't get all the same finishing that the other car has. We specified it as an unmarked investigator vehicle, and that's how it was bid as. So it doesn't come with the spotlights on it, doesn't come with the heavy wiring cables from the front to the back, that sort of thing. There'll be a little bit of upfit cost for that, but it won't be very extensive.
Great.
Question number 2. I see there are two 2016 Dodge Charger all-wheel drives, and there's about a $2,000 price difference here between unmarked investigator vehicle and marked police cruiser. What's the difference?
The police cruiser comes with a cabling package, the spotlights, and it's set up to be a marked police car,
Okay.
as opposed to just an unmarked car, which it's downsized.
Yeah,
Yep.
good, thanks.
Other questions?
The C-Max, and I understand the logic behind going for it, and certainly Ford knows, I guess, the hybrid stuff as well as anybody. It's obviously not an emergency service use.
It is not a
Per
first
se.
response vehicle.
Is the warranty that Ford offers, they will, even though it's in a police service, but not an emergency police service, the warranty will still carry, there's not gonna be any discrepancy there?
The warranty was, it's about the same as the cruisers.
So we're not gonna impact the warranty, I guess is the question?
No,
Okay.
No.
Okay,
no, because they were bid as police cars,
yes, okay.
a special service police car.
Okay. So from what I'm hearing, the question that Gary asked, and it's a good question, is that essentially, I mean, ultimately, we're going to be faced with a point where that particular Charger won't be in production anymore, the model will change, and we're gonna have to go through expensive cages and the like. But at this point, it sounds as though we could make relatively easy transition and save a fair bit of money on the aftermarket fit-up.
Yeah, looking at the specifications, they seem to be about the same as the previous Chargers we've had.
Okay.
And that's why Dick is here, and he could answer that question specifically. Has there been a significant change in body style? It didn't look like it from the material, so.
So,
And that happens sometimes with other vehicles. Chevy, it happened a lot.
Yeah.
There were some minor changes in the vehicle design, which meant we had to go out and buy all new stuff, and we've got a garage full of junk now. And would prefer to avoid that if we could, because that is expensive.
yeah. So while I'm always cognizant of the low bid, I'm looking at it that in fact the price differential is likely to be more than $421 at this state.
Probably the final upfit cost would be fairly significantly different.
This Dodge Charger is all-wheel drive?
All-wheel drive.
Okay, our other ones were not, are they?
They were two-wheel drive.
Great.
Glad to see you going that
Yeah.
direction.
I just want to point out that we had a discussion about cruisers and maybe trying to extend the life of cars. The trade-in value for these cars this year was significant. It was, I don't remember the precise dollar figures, between $14,000 and $15,000 for the two cars.
14.5.
14.5, okay. That's fairly significant considering we used to auction these cars off for $200 or $300 or $400.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So
that's
it
great.
significantly reduces the cost of these vehicles to us if they're in better shape when they go out the door.
It stuck in my mind because we talked about that. Chief.
Yes, yep. I think I put it on
Yeah.
you've seen the message, the mail message to Kathleen. Yep.
Okay. Dick or Scott, anything you want to add to the conversation that you haven't?
You hit it all.
Okay, great. Any other questions from the board? Pleasure of the board.
I think I'm going to make a motion on this one here, after hearing Tom's response to the questions. And I'm going to make a motion that we award, and this is for 2 police cars, one to Foster Motors for the 2016 Dodge Charger all-wheel drive for the sum of $21,339, and we award to G Stone Motors for the unmarked investigator vehicle, a 2016 Ford C-Max Hybrid for the sum of $18,585.
Okay, is there a second to that motion? Donna?
Second it.
Motion has been made and seconded to purchase 2 police vehicles. The first one from Foster Motors, the 2016 Dodge Charger all-wheel drive, and the other one from Foster Motors, the investigator vehicle, a Ford C-Max Hybrid for $18,585. Is there any further discussion?
Is the reasoning just to sort of spread the wealth?
No, well, no, the reasoning is the reasoning is that
Subject to the
because
fit-up, right?
the fit-up costs
Okay.
to go to this, another police cruiser will be a fair bit less at this point. Ultimately, we're going to be faced with these higher fit-up costs as the manufacturers change models. And it may very well be the next time we are looking at a police cruiser, it may be a matter that the Dodge is different. And so at that point, the Dodge, the Ford, and whatever Chevrolet may offer at that time would be essentially equal. But at this point, I think the fit-up cost differential is such that we can save ourselves some money. As far as the hybrid, that's the car that's been requested. It sounds like it's one's going to work quite well, and it's worth trying. So.
Can I make a request in the future that we hear that information too, in these kind of information that goes out to us? Because that would be really helpful to know.
Sure.
As part of it. I mean, it's just sort of hard to take it all in and compare things when I don't think of these things. I don't know them. So I'm not sure if that makes a difference to you.
Yeah, it can.
Yeah.
It can.
If it does,
If
to
we
put
can,
it in there.
if we can use existing equipment rather than buying it again.
Well, I think that's great. So, you know, if that makes a difference, then I'm all for that. So, I don't know. I've never seen that in here. So, okay.
He may not have known,
Why wouldn't you know?
because he's not a car dealer.
Laura, did you have a
But don't you
question?
think
But
about
yeah, point's well taken, and we have done it in the past.
I was
Compared bids with the total upfit cost of the car as opposed to the
I've seen
bid
that
price of the
once
car.
before, so yeah.
Yep.
But it is something you think about all the time, right, isn't it?
Yeah, when we reviewed the bids, as I said, we looked at the
Yeah.
specifications on the car for size, and we made the assumption that they would probably be the same, but we didn't.
You've always been very conscious of that, so I didn't,
Yeah.
I wouldn't undercut that from you.
Laura?
I certainly think it's a good direction to go toward a hybrid car, as you're doing, and to look for other efficiencies in the technology, including the fit-up technology. And I just wondered if you're seeing anything, you know, that's coming on the market that would bring any of that down. Because I know that's equipment that runs on all the, continuously.
Yeah, right now, I wouldn't consider a hybrid car for a frontline emergency response police cruiser. They would just wear out too fast. They're not really designed for that. They don't make a police patrol package per se as a hybrid. They make them for special service that aren't going to get beat up. And as far as upfit costs,
I didn't mean for that. I meant like for the other equipment that would go into it, like the charger, to upgrade the is that equipment that goes into something like the charger
It's
getting
pretty-
improved?
it's pretty, I'll just call it analog stuff.
Okay.
It's just structural stuff that goes in the car, and there's really only I mean, it's to get rid of the fabricated seat in the back and put a base, a floor panel in there so that the driver doesn't get kicked, a barrier, it's a hard metal barrier with a screen on it and the back seat, so that way the car can be cleaned out easy with the drain plugs in it. There's really no technologically superior way to make it. It's just plastic stuff.
Okay.
And, yeah, there really is no, when we look at that, like a K9 car that we talked about, it's a compartment that actually slides and fits in the back of the car. So, yeah, I get your point, and I see that, but we look around and we shop around when we buy this stuff to see what company is offering the best that's going to be serviceable for us, that'll be useful.
Thank you.
Any other discussion on the motion? Those in favor of the motion? I'm sorry, go ahead, Brian.
Maybe is just to clarify the motion and the rationale, because it wasn't part of the bid package. If we could add to the motion the rationale for selecting the Charger, because it was not the low bidder, but in the discussion that was more was revealed.
Sure.
Just so on record that
Mhm.
we have why we did it.
Well, it certainly will be in our minutes, too.
Minutes too, yeah.
Yeah.
But-
The motion is to award the bid, but the rationale behind it is important, which precedes that in the minutes. Yep. Good
Because it's
point.
almost, we haven't got a guarantee, but
Mhm.
it's kind of the bid ought to be subject to that fitting.
Right.
Because if it doesn't fit up, then
Right.
maybe we ought to relook the bid.
Yep.
So-
Good. Other discussions? Those in favor of the motion then signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? We are 7 in favor and none absent. Thank you both. Next up is the award of the Middlebury Visitor Service Signs bid. And Kathleen, I'll let you walk us through that.
I'm pleased to share that we finally have bids for the visitor service signs. We had 3 bids. WS Sign Design Corporation for $13,821. The Lorento Sign Group for $17,522. And Wood and Wood Sign Systems for $32,947. The designer Landworks and the state Agency of Transportation, who is administering this grant program, reviewed the bids and found them to be in conformance with the specifications and has accepted the town's recommendation that we award the bid to WS Sign Design Group for $13,821.
Do we get to look at them at all, or is there any?
In the packet, in your last packet, there was a
We had the,
We saw them
as part of that bid specs, right?
Mhm.
They had
Yep,
the-
yep.
Yeah, it's gonna look nice.
They're nice, yeah.
They're beautiful. It's taken a long
10
time.
years in the works.
10 years.
Has it been
Close
that
to 10
long?
years.
Yes, it's been 10 years. 2006 was the grant award.
Really? What are they made from? Are they metal or are they plastic? Or?
There's a combination. There's some parking signs, I think that will be metal, and some other laminated, like the signs we have over at the towers in the Riverfront
Oh, yeah.
Park.
Yeah,
They're those type of interpretive signs.
Great.
Really long-lasting things.
Yep.
Yeah.
Super.
Ready for a motion?
I am, if there's no questions for Kathleen. Go ahead, Brian.
So I would move to accept the Landworks recommendation to award the contract for the fabrication and installation of interpretive sign panels and parking signs as part of the Visitor Services Sign Project to the low bidder, WE Sign Design Corp., for a total cost of $13,821.
Thank you. Is there a second?
Second.
Seconded by Nick. Motion's been made by Brian, seconded by Nick, to support the recommended bid for the interpretive signs. Any further discussion? Those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? We're 7 in favor and none absent. Thank you. Okay. The easement for relocating the sewer line for the Ridge Line project seems pretty straightforward.
Dan is here to answer any questions that you may have about that. He's been working with the college and the town attorney on the easement language.
Sure.
And the review of that.
Dan?
Catherine, can you put up that picture?
Sure.
The best way to show it. So this is an easement that the college is gonna wants to grant to us for the sanitary sewer line, which will serve the Ridgeline project. And just to orient yourselves, at the bottom is a gray shaded street is Adirondack. So the top of the page is if you're looking west towards Cornwall. And so the easement that's going to, the sewer line that's sewer easement that's going to be abandoned is the lower one of those parallel dashed lines that goes from the lower left-hand side of the page to the upper right-hand side. And the new easement is the upper dashed lines that start at the same point and head a little bit west and then head northwesterly over towards 125, which is off the side of the page. So the language before you is to make that change.
It looks like it crosses Ridgeline Road twice.
Yeah.
Is that right?
Yeah.
Is that going to be a directional bore kind of thing, or?
They're gonna they're gonna excavate it.
Cut the road up?
So they need to move the lower, the sewer line is moving, being relocated from, if you can look at the series of boxed right-angle boxes that make the project. So the sewer line is in the way of that project, so they're moving it to the west,
Okay.
and then north to go around that.
Okay.
There's no services in that section that's being dead-ended?
I'm not certain. It goes, that sewer line goes from some of the buildings that are served along Adirondack, and it goes down to the 125 pump station. Through that was once undeveloped land. I don't know if I'm answering your question quite right, so.
There's no other buildings that are serviced from that little section, short section that we're doing the quitclaim deed on, right?
The part that's being abandoned?
Part that's being
Right.
abandoned.
Oh.
Is there any reason why we would not approve it?
Why we would not?
Right.
No. No reason. Maybe I'm not following you.
Pretty cut and dry.
No one's ever
Yeah.
asked
Yeah,
that
it is.
before.
It is. It is. Yeah. So, but to summarize it, to summarize it simply, they wanted to do the Ridgeline project, which is a series of boxes, and the sewer line that went down towards 125 pump station was in the way.
Yeah.
So they had to move it to the west to get out west and then north arc around it, so they could do this project. And that's what it is, to relocate the sewer line. So,
I was going to ask the question in reverse. Is there any reason why you would not want us to do this, or you have an
I
objection?
don't
Okay.
Just ready for a motion.
Yeah.
Two motions.
Pretty much.
Donna, go ahead.
I move to approve a quitclaim deed to relinquish an existing town sewer line easement on college-owned land and accept a new sewer line easement deed from the college.
Second.
So the first motion to approve the quitclaim deed relinquishing the town sewer line easement on college-owned land west of Adirondack View has been made by Donna and seconded by Laura. Any further discussion? Those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? We're 7 in favor and none opposed. And the second motion?
I would move to accept the easement deed from the college to facilitate installation, operation, maintenance, and repair of a new sewer main on college-owned land to the west of Adirondack View.
Second.
So that motion has been made by Donna, seconded by Brian, to again accept the easement deed from the college to facilitate the installation, operation, maintenance, and repair of the new sewer line on college-owned land to the west of Adirondack View. Any further discussion? Those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. 7 in favor and none absent. Thank you. Dan, before you leave, we had a quick question from Ross Conrad during citizen comments, which we held off until you got here. And Ross had a question about what was being planned for any sidewalk repair replacement on Main Street between the bank and
the
Cannon Park
and the fountain, basically, the main downtown.
So that was the bridge, the town bridge area?
Yeah, and on either side. Is there any sidewalk
We haven't.
repair plan for this year?
For
Anything
next year,
budgeted?
we can add it, we can budget for it, yeah.
Well, my thought is, Some areas are really in poor shape, big
Right.
chunks missing, and I know some municipalities have experienced situations where individuals walking trip, hurt themselves, and actually the municipality is found liable for not maintaining a safe walkway.
Right.
And my concern is with the pending major construction of the bridges, we don't probably want to be doing the sidewalk when that would be just too much. So this year would probably be a good time to get it out of the way before we got another few years of other construction.
Right.
And so I'm hoping you'll consider that.
Sure.
Thank you.
Isn't most of that sidewalk only like 10, 15 years old?
No, he's talking about, from including the bridge section of the Patel Bridge, coming back this way towards the roundabout, towards Cannon Park.
Yeah, and on the other side, like in front of 51 Main, there was a section that was done
Right.
maybe a couple years ago, but it was just one section. Both sides still have parts that are pretty rough.
Right. The dicey part's gonna be the section that's over the, let's call it the southern barrel section of the Battelle Bridge,
Mhm.
up against where the Caroline's Closet used to be, in there. Tricky spot.
Yeah.
That is, there's the open section of the barrel is underneath that sidewalk, so, it'll be interesting to get that done.
Normally, the Public Works Committee meets with Operations Director and goes over the projects for the coming year and what's going to be the priorities and that kind of thing. So I think between Susan and Dan, I think they've heard that request, and hopefully we'll be
Thank you.
looking at that. Great. Thanks. Okay, next up is the finalizing of the proposed fiscal year 2017 budget. And since we left off at our last meeting, Kathleen has provided us with a little bit of additional information. Particularly, some of the good news is from our town assessor that he has estimated a slight increase in the grand list over what he was proposing not that long ago, and suggesting that we use the conservative side of that estimate as what should be a pretty valid grand list for us going forward in 2017. And what that has done is reduced any amount that we were considering to use from our fund balance to present a budget to the voters that would require no increase in the amount to be raised by property taxes. Anything more you want to add to that, Kathleen?
So, just to elaborate a little bit on the fund balance, we had proposed to use $75,000 in the current fiscal year. In the coming fiscal year, with the changes in the estimated grand list, we're looking at an additional $42,500 for $117,500 to be taken from the fund balance to present a no increase in the tax rate budget this year.
Any questions or comments for Kathleen?
No, it seems to
Other
be-
comments?
So do we pop the balloon now?
Yay.
I thank you for working so hard at trying to meet that goal. I know
Yeah.
that everybody on the town staff has worked hard, and
It has.
That's
that's
Everyone
quite an
did work
accomplishment.
hard, but setting the plate for next year, we had several lucky breaks that came together
Yeah.
for this particular budget, so. may not
Taking
be
advantage of those savings is important, yeah.
I'll take lucky breaks whenever we
so-
can.
Because we don't get a lot.
Exactly.
Luck comes to those who
Okay.
work hard.
Yeah.
Often.
Yeah, there you go. I agree with that.
Great. Any other questions or comments? Pleasure of the board.
Make a motion to finalize and approve the fiscal year 17 budget for inclusion on town meeting warning for consideration by the voters on Monday, February 29th, 2016.
Second?
So the motion has been made by Nick and seconded by Brian to approve the proposed fiscal year 2017 budget. And if we can get the specific numbers in that motion, I think that would be helpful. And I've got $10,116 and $10,116,165. And the amount to be raised by taxes at $6,943,658.
Yes, that should be part of the motion.
Okay. Any further discussion on the motion? Hearing none, those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? We are 7 in favor and none absent. Thank you. Thank you, Kathleen.
Yes, very much.
Next up is to finalize the warning for town meeting. And bring it up here on the screen. I have it right in front of me. So the numbers plugged into Article 2 are those that we just adopted for the budget. One of the questions I had in my conversation with Ann yesterday was that the Article 6 would be one that is voted on by Australian ballot as opposed to having it approved with the budget at town meeting, at the information meeting. And it's essentially up to us as to where we want to have that located. So I thought it would be good to have a bit of discussion on that. If Article 6 is voted on by Australian ballot on town meeting day and approved, then that 6,500 would be added
The one here,
to the budget that we've
they're talking about this one.
proposed and would be approved, hopefully, on the informational meeting on February 29th. If we had it as part of the business at the information meeting, then it could be either voted up or down and included with the budget that night.
Mine's different.
The one, we should be looking at the one on the website when we're looking at Article
Okay.
6. This was incorporating all of the articles
Okay.
as a special draft for tonight. So on the website, Article 6 is about the Charter House.
Okay. I'm sorry, Dean, can you say again? Because
Sure.
I was just wondering why you wanted the penalty charge moved to the
No,
Australian.
hadn't got to that
Like,
yet,
I
sorry.
don't understand.
No, this is the Charter House. This is
Okay.
the new request for a public agency request for funding from the town.
Correct.
And has been our practice in the past. Any increases or new ones, we would have those discussed and either approved or voted on at town meeting.
Mhm.
Having the Charter House request, which is a new one for 6,500, is not included in the budget that we just approved, the proposed budget. So the question is, do we want to have it discussed, the information meeting, and then voted on by Australian ballot on town meeting, or discussed and approved or not approved at the informational meeting?
Well, that's what we talked about with our with our policy, is to have it discussed and have it go in town meeting. So I think if we're going to change that, then we also
Okay.
need to take a look at that.
So the policy, Susan says that it should be voted on by Australian ballot. So the ones that have the increases are included in our budget, but could be removed at the information meeting through discussion if they weren't supported.
Are you saying it has to be in Australian
not
ballot? I think
saying-
it's that night, isn't it?
No, I'm saying that it's supposed to be that night during town meeting.
That's what I thought you were.
That's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
So wouldn't we want to be
What's the
consistent?
wording on the?
That's what I'm trying to find. I mean, because we talked about that, of like separating things out, and we were, I think whether we put it in writing or not, that's what we were talking about, to keep it with everything else. So the people that are changing the nonprofits that might be changing their amount that they're requesting, or if there's a nonprofit asking for more, that they are doing it all during town meeting. So,
The information meeting.
yeah, I'm just, it's hard to,
I don't have that policy in front of me, so I don't
It
know.
is in your budget folder, about midway down the list of things to do, the files listed. And I'm looking at it, it's on the screen now, and I'm trying to scan it as well.
Thank you, I got it.
and if supported by the board, present its case to the voters at town meeting. We reserve the right to reject, amend, or edit any petition article, doesn't meet the requirements. I don't think it specifically
I
says.
don't think it's specified.
No.
I don't think
What
it specifies.
way, and you have that choice, but sometimes people actually petition by saying how they
Right.
want it
Right.
Right.
voted.
Okay,
Mm-hmm.
so
But that doesn't, this
But otherwise,
petition
I think
doesn't
it's
say
up
that.
to you.
it
Yeah.
doesn't say that, so.
Right, so it is up to the board as to where they want to see it. Yeah.
Our policy just dealt with the review of,
Right.
of
We-
and how we
And
would.
that we wouldn't include it in our budget until it's been approved by the voters.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
And did you have a preference on the way it was presented?
No. No, either way would be.
Do we have any precedence of the last nonprofit that?
The last nonprofit that I recall was Otter Creek Childcare,
Mhm.
and that was done by Australian ballot.
Mm-hmm.
And I think we would
Okay.
should,
Okay.
I tend to like that for a new one.
yeah,
to be
because
on
it's a
Australian
new,
ballot,
it's a new
and then
one.
maybe the,
It's still going to be discussed at the information meeting.
They should
Yeah.
still,
Yeah.
do the presentation.
Okay?
My inclination is the same way Gary said, and partially for the reason of just thinking how I think, is that when I have something presented, especially if I haven't been exposed to it, it gives me a little bit of time just to think, and to analyze it, and evaluate yes or no, and then I think make a more informed decision, and
Okay.
a wiser decision, so I would opt for Australian.
My only thing would be if we're gonna do that to really, you know, if we have good reasons for doing it twice now, that it probably should be
Mhm.
put in this,
Mhm.
that that's what we're doing,
Mhm.
other than, and that way we don't have to debate it every year.
Exactly.
Develop-
Yeah.
And
Yeah,
I'd
good
really rather not. So, I mean, I think we put a lot of work into this. I'd like to see it
Mhm.
not get changed a lot. So if we
Good point.
have
I
a
agree.
difference, then let's also make that change in here.
Good, no, good valid
Okay.
point.
So Susan's going to draft us an amendment to that policy.
So funny. Just so funny.
Do we make a motion on that?
So, yeah, I think there's general consensus that that's the way we'll proceed with that.
Mhm.
Anything else on the first 6 articles?
Did
The
you
equipment,
did you have that?
I did have a question.
Oh, okay. I don't know if
Ross?
I saw that.
I'm just wondering, I haven't seen this draft you're working on. Is there anything on the town meeting agenda or ballot regarding the town auditor's position?
Mm-hmm.
Okay,
Yes.
good, thank you.
Yep, we're going to get to that. Yeah. So in the
I have
first,
a question on Article 4.
okay, I was going to go to 3 first. But,
Okay.
uh,
You can go to 3 first.
we're going to have a discussion about the equipment. We've got some new information at Public Works. Is there any concern about the equipment at this point? We can come back to that if we should make any changes, but at this point,
It's a budget loader.
that's what I'm going to ask during the...
wish we had
Okay.
one every year.
We're
Dan,
trying to load that budget for next year. That's all we're trying to do.
I thought we'd gotten rid of all the budget loaders. Okay.
I don't
So-
know, Brian, it sounds like your industry, so you tell us, what is it?
So we're going to change that word to bucket then?
Yep.
Good, okay. And on Article 4?
Article 4, it looks like for collecting taxes on the specific dates, and then it looks like we're adding you in the treasurer's office on the specific days, which is a change from the postmark. So I just wanted to highlight that that's a change, and it seems to tie in with a possible article.
Right, that is in connection with the 2 possible articles, so we should revisit that.
Come back to that
If
after
you're
we do-
not
Okay,
inclined to pursue these articles.
okay.
Since one of the
Why don't we do that one now then?
since one of the articles suggests that there would be a graduated penalty for late taxes due to enable Jackie to notify folks that we did not receive their payment. She needs to know on the due date who's late and who's not. We can't be waiting for postmarks, or that 10 days could go by. So we'd like to, for example, on March 15th, say, you're late, send everybody a notice it's late, and so they could pay within the 10 days.
And if it's within those 10 days, that there's no,
There's a 1% penalty.
the 1%, so we do away from the postmark? Or the
Yeah.
postmark still counts also?
The postmark does not count under this proposal.
That sounds a bit risky, because if someone is away and they're sending it, the postmark, it could take several days to get from there to here. But the postmark, it says at least they in good faith got it in on that time. That's,
But it also gives them 10 days
yes.
Before penalty.
before the penalty. It gives them 10 days.
No, there'd be a
before-
1%.
The
1% within
1%,
the
but
first
not
10?
the old one, which was immediate, higher, so.
Right.
Why, I have a question. Why do we have to remind people to pay their taxes? They know when it's public.
Ann, do you want to weigh in on this?
Well, I had been wondering kind of what the treasurer's position was on it, obviously, because personally, I've always been in favor of not using postmark. I think it's
Jackie
an arbitrary
suggested
way
this
of not
language.
even knowing what your deadline is,
Mhm.
and postmark makes it so you have no date to go by to actually know, and you could get something a month later and the
Okay.
postmark is good. So personally, I like the idea of doing away with the postmark, but I think the graduated penalty with a 1% and 10 days and then additional 7% after is certainly very fair. I just want to make sure it's not an added burden to the treasurer in terms of having to keep track of the 1% and then, but it sounds like something she's in favor of.
Sounds like her suggestion.
Mhm.
She specifically addressed the postmark, and we had discussed a number of times over the year the graduated penalty. And I've reviewed this with Jackie, and she's comfortable with it.
Postmark is difficult.
That sounds like that could be more burdensome than what this would be.
Yeah. The postmark,
Yeah.
yes,
Yeah.
yes,
Okay.
it can be very burdensome.
Okay.
Any other discussion?
The only
Yeah.
The only counter argument would be that, like, the federal government uses postmark, and when you think of taxes, you know, the state and federal government accept postmark, so.
Everybody else does too. Insurance
Yeah.
payments.
I would think you might have to expect, I mean, if something were lost or not due to the payees, you know, it's not their fault, and it gets there 25 days late, you would have to have some way to, I mean, I think the graduated plan is great, but you'd have to have some way to amend that to compensate for that. I don't know if you can eliminate the postmark and then say you're still going to look at it under special circumstances. I mean, you know, you're talking about
We
trying to do
do
an
try to
absolute
be-
versus flexibility in
We
there.
do try
somehow.
to be reasonable.
I was going to say, yeah, I would assume the town would be flexible to some extent.
But, yeah, as long as
Because I think there's a legal issue. I mean, if it were me and I had my postmark, I might be upset.
we have a process to review good faith like that, then
Right,
I think it's acceptable to go this way.
me too.
Ross Conrad.
Could I just suggest that if the board decides to go forward with this proposal, that there be a strong concerted educational effort to inform folks in town of this change, so no
Mhm.
one's caught unaware, it would be unfortunate.
Absolutely.
More responsibility on us to get people to pay their taxes. That's what I object to.
Yeah.
You know, it should just have to be published, that's it. And if you don't read the publication, that's your fault.
We were thinking about a special insert in the tax bill this year, if this is something that's approved.
Okay, you know, that's good.
I do like the graduated.
Yeah,
It's
yeah.
It's a
It's a more humane
huge
treatment.
penalty if you miss it one day. It's
Yeah.
like, oh, I forget
Yeah.
to get by, or something happens.
Yeah, me too.
Well, it sounds like we can run it this way and see what happens. It may not be a problem.
Okay, so we're gonna give that one an article number 8. Does that sound right?
So, Dean, in the blue,
Yeah.
I incorporated all of the articles that were maybe under discussion.
Okay.
From the draft you already had.
Okay, gotcha.
The only thing we haven't discussed is the K-9 program, and if that was going to be included on the warning, or, Ross, if you want to get those. Either way, if you wanted to put it on the floor vote or on the
So-
Australian ballot, or didn't want to include it at all.
Well, before we get to that, we do have the town auditor,
Mhm.
article number 8.
Can I back you up just
Yep.
one? You were saying the one we were just talking about with the graduated penalty
Mm-hmm.
being number 8, is that?
Be
gonna
number
also
7. I'm sorry,
the
because,
Australian ballot?
No.
Then it should be number 6.
it is.
It's 6 in the blue,
Or it
right?
should be number
Yeah.
5.
So that's why I printed out these blue sheets, and if you could grab one.
Yeah.
Article 10 is now.
I was
6.
looking at the other one too, Ann. This one makes it a little easier to, yeah.
Well, I couldn't find it in the other, but looking at the
Thanks,
blue.
Okay.
Okay. So this would become Article 6
You can share.
Oh, we'll share.
on the
Okay.
blue. And number 7 would be the installment payment.
Can flip.
Article number 8 would be shall the town vote to eliminate the office of town auditor pursuant to the provisions of Title 17, 2651B subsection A and Section 304B3 of the town charter, which is what we approved last year, if you may recall. Is there a consensus to add that on as Article 8? Okay. Ross, did you have a comment you wanted to make on that, or are you just looking to make sure it was there?
Yep, just
Okay.
What? Bring me up to speed here.
Pardon me?
We voted on this last year also?
We voted to amend the charter last year to
Okay,
allow for
okay,
this.
'cause it's a charter item.
Yeah.
I got it.
And so then the last article before voting by Australian ballot would be to transact other business. So are we all set on the first 9 articles then?
I think just the K-9 program.
Okay, that's not on, that's after Article 9, isn't it?
No,
Well,
it's
actually,
Yeah,
right
I
now
put it on as Article
Article
4
number
by the
4,
budget
right.
Oh, I'm
discussion,
sorry.
so
That's why I
didn't
think
know.
everything shifts.
Yeah, it does, okay.
Yeah.
Thanks, Laura.
So we're gonna,
Article 4, let's go back to that. Shall the town vote to appropriate a sum not to exceed $50,000 to establish a K-9 program? Do we want to have that in for discussion this year?
Boy, it's going to be a busy night.
I'm going to recommend that we not. I think I would like, we've worked really hard to bring a budget that doesn't have any increase in it, and I think this would be a good program to begin looking at how we're going to fund this through our committee work coming up for the next budget year, and then come back to the board with a budget request if it's supported by, say, Public Safety Committee, and move forward on it. But I'll defer to what others think.
We don't have it in the budget now,
We don't.
No.
so that would bump our tax rate.
Right.
So,
But that's the point of the discussion, and those present could elect that if they wanted to.
They could, but Laura, the board hasn't weighed in and made its decision first, which is part of what we're elected to do.
I'm inclined to agree with you.
I think it's a little premature.
Yeah.
Just, and I'm not saying it's a bad idea, I just would like to see all the analysis of it.
It's good to know what the potential cost would be, but it'd be great to have that supported by the board and put into the budget. And then if the voters choose not to have it, they could elect to take it out of the budget.
If we have everybody there, is it something that we can ask for their input on just how they feel about it for planning it for this next year? I mean, it's not, something official, if we don't talk about a sum, but just talk about asking, I don't know if there's a way to poll people for, if
Well,
there's
it's,
support for it.
that too is part of what the committee could do, and it could choose, as we've done with other projects, we've looked to get input from the public and get
Mhm.
feedback, and then present a position to the board for consideration.
Mhm.
Do you have other topics? You may want to put together a very short survey.
That's what I'm thinking.
Well, that's what I mean, the committee could do that if it's gonna support that.
Prior
think it's
to town
premature for
meeting,
this
so
year.
it could be at town meeting?
Well, that's what I'm just saying, just to get some feedback.
We did that with the sidewalk maintenance
Right.
a couple of years ago.
Chief Hanley?
Had some good
Yeah, I
results.
think the issue that came up at the meeting last year was what would it cost and what are the breakdowns, and we've
Yeah.
done that. So I think the answer would be if we brought the answers to the questions now. So if it goes to town meeting rather than voting on this, I think I'm in agreement that we kind of threw this in later based on what was talked about last year, that at least if the topic is brought up, I can provide the answers to the questions that we didn't have last year.
Okay.
Okay.
We've done that, and then it can move forward. We didn't have any answers last year. It was kind of a topic brought up by a bunch of people at town meeting, and there's no answers to those questions.
Mhm.
We have them. We've got the list of what these things cost, what the program is gonna cost first year, second year, third year.
Mhm.
And lay it out. But you're right, it kind of skips past the select board process and the public safety committee process. I think we had a discussion maybe at the public safety committee,
Mhm.
but we didn't have a full range. So I
Yeah.
think you're right, it's probably appropriate to get some support at this level rather than foisting it
Yeah.
there at this point. And I just wanted to clarify that.
Sure.
It was, what are the answers to these questions?
Right.
We didn't have them, we have them. And if it's a topic of discussion, we can provide that.
Is there something that you're looking for from the voters to find out if there's support from the voters at all?
No, again, it was
Not
just,
really?
there was a bunch of questions, and we didn't have the answers, and I think I said we'll bring them back next year.
Okay.
And I have them. We now have
Okay.
a full budget, what it cost, and actual
So are
figures
you
rather than
gonna
just I think, I
Are you gonna
guess.
say a little something at town meeting then, or?
If it's brought up, absolutely, I'm prepared to do that.
But not if it's not brought up?
That could come under other business to be transacted. We could have
Yeah,
a,
I could raise my hand and just say, I'm
Yep.
a citizen, a
Yep.
resident, right? I can-
yeah, yes, you
You can
can.
I can take off my police hat and put on my Dean Lane hat.
Yeah,
I mean, I think it's nice.
And bring it up just as a response to questions we had last year, because
If you-
people are interested, and I do get questions about this. This is what it cost, and we can just refer it back that the board will be looking at this, the Public Safety Committee, and put up a proposal.
Sounds good.
But I think it's just kind of came in the back door,
Yep.
without a public discussion on this.
so is there consensus then we would remove Article 4?
Yes.
So we'd have to renumber them?
Which one are we supposed to be looking at?
The blue one?
Blue one.
Blue one. I'm looking at the one in the notes here.
So
Okay.
Article 5.
So
now
here,
the
you
time.
guys, yeah, we're looking at this one. So if you took out 4,
Took out
Yeah.
4, Article
Right.
5
Remembering
becomes
the rest of
4.
On my other one, it
the other one
was,
didn't match. No, I know, I was looking
Yeah.
at it.
So we're all working on the same blue copy, right?
Yes.
We are now.
So Article 4 has been scratched, Article 5 becomes 4, 6, 5, Article 7 becomes 6, Article 8 becomes 7, Article 9 becomes 8. And then for voting by Australian ballot, Article 10 becomes Article 9, which is shall the town appropriate $6,500 to the Charter House Coalition for supporting their emergency housing and daily food programs. And then finally, Article 11 becomes 10, to elect officers as required by the Middlebury Town Charter. Are we in
Yes.
agreement
We
to
have a
that?
warning.
Now we can take an action to, would
So
I hear a motion to approve the
I
warning?
would make a motion to finalize the 2016 town meeting warning as amended.
Thank you, Susan.
second.
Seconded by Brian. Any further discussion? Those in favor then signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? We're 7 in favor and none absent. Thank you. Thank you, Chief. Okay, reports, and as we had said earlier in the meeting, I'm just going to take a couple of these out of order, if it's okay with the board, and we'll start off with our Public Works and Facilities Committee meeting of January 14th. Susan?
So, I'll go, had a certain order, so let me just skip down to
Sure.
K Street Ready Mix, since Travis and Tori are here. Just as a recap, K Street had paid for several sections of the sidewalk that they installed to be retested for compliance with their contract specifications. And these sections had failed to meet the specs, but K Street raised questions as to whether the tester, the testing company had incorrectly performed the test. So the Select Board, Public Works Committee had recommended, and then the Select Board had approved for K Street to pay for the areas to be retested, and if they passed, the town would reimburse K Street for the testing and complete payment for their work. But if they did not pass, then K Street would replace these sections of sidewalk. And so that's what Travis and Tori were talking about. The results showed the average PSI of 3,038.30 for the 3 sites at 110 days. And what the committee discussion was, we talked with Travis. He didn't bring that other information that he brought to us this evening to the committee. So we discussed that basically that the contract calls for a PSI of 4,000 at 28 days. K Street felt that the ACI standard was met, but the committee concluded that the contract standard had not been met, and we voted to accept the results of the test and to identify the areas that needed to be replaced. Obviously, K Street did not agree with that. And my question that I written, has there been any follow-up? And you guys are here, so yes,
Yeah.
there has.
So, and Dan, unfortunately, you weren't here at the beginning of the board meeting. Travis and Tori presented some documents and some information to us that, and I don't want to speak for you, Travis, but it sounded like you were providing information that suggested that the industry standard included a 15% margin of error for those tests.
Correct. I mean, I can recap it if you like.
Sure, go ahead.
Would you guys come on up?
So, like I said, I had information from National Ready Mix Concrete Association, ASTM International, American Concrete Institute, American Society of Concrete Core Testing. There's another one called Testing Engineers, and several more that I could have got, but I figured this would be enough to get going. Anyways, I got all these here and read through them, and I came up with the best conclusion being from the Department of Civil Engineering, University of Wisconsin. And I'll read it again here. So it says, the conclusion is that when a core is tested, the indicated strength is always lower than the equivalent cylinder strength. In addition, more importantly, as the strength level goes up, the reduction goes up. Actually, core strength is allowed to be 15% lower than the cylinder strength, not only in the US code, but Canada, Germany, India, Finland, so on. And like I said, it's all in these, it all reads basically the same. I've got concrete and practice stuff from National Ready Mix. It shows you how the cylinders are broke. It tells you why concrete strengths can be low. It tells you different reasons why they test it in place. All that good stuff.
Travis, when we met last, we talked about that. I'm trying to remember all of the details, but it seemed like you were alleging that the test wasn't done properly, and that was part of the problem.
Correct.
So it was tested again.
Yes.
And I presume the results are pretty close to the same. Is that what we're seeing?
No. So Dan picked the spot where he wanted it to core. He took the 3 cores. The cores came back at 3,830 pounds average.
Average.
Okay.
Yes, because some went over and some were under, so.
Yep. And that's a difference of 170 pounds from the desired strength, which is in the contract, 4,000 pounds.
Okay.
So I did some basic math here. 170 pounds is 4% off from the desired strength. So the standards say that I'm allowed 15%. So if I did the math, the 15% would equal 574 pounds, plus the 3830, which would bring the strength up over 4,400.
Well, there's a, you're suggesting that there is a variance in terms of the threshold that could be considered. Is the 3830, I don't have the numbers from before, is that a significant increase over what they were tested at before? Is it roughly?
What the committee talked about is that it seemed to indicate that how, that it's going to get, Dan, that it's going to get more solid as it goes through, but it's still never really, it seemed to go in the same arc that it was from the original testing. It didn't significantly deviate, in my words, to show that original testing was incorrect from my viewpoint. And the committee wanted to go back to the fact that it was supposed to be that 4,000 PSI from the beginning. And so what I was hoping for is that it would show a significant spike, that it would show that it was significantly over that 4,000, and so we could say, yes, that initial testing was different. And this didn't. And so for me, it seemed to show that initial test results were probably very accurate compared to what we required from them of the 4,000 PSI. I mean, it's hard. And on top, I know Dan also pointed out that they're supposed to be 5-inch thick, and they're not. I just felt like we didn't prove that the original testing was incorrect.
Dan?
I agree with what Susan's saying. What's important to realize is that we're not really looking for 4,000 PSI at the end of the day. The 4,000 is at 28 days. It's a benchmark because concrete continues to cure over time, as you can see from these results. So we know that whether it's a sidewalk or a bridge girder, that concrete ages, and as it ages, it gains strength. So what we're looking for to make sure that concrete's going to perform the way, in this case, for a sidewalk, what we wanted to do is going to be 4,000 pounds at 28 days. It may eventually cure out at 5,200 or 5,500, but that's a given that concrete's going to continue to cure out. So you shouldn't be confused with what it's at 4,000 or not 4,000 at 110 days is a different number, because that concrete's pretty much done curing. Once it freezes, it's not going to cure anymore. So the final concrete cure is pretty much around that 3,800 PSI average. But if you had a concrete that was tested at 4,000 PSI at 28 days, you are going to be seeing a 52 or 5,400 PSI concrete. It's a much higher number. And I think that is where this 15% or 25% comes from, because they know at the end of that curing process, you've got a much harder concrete.
That's incorrect. There's stuff right here that states exactly why they give you the 15%, and it has nothing to do with that. Concrete at 7 days old is right around 70% of its strength. At the end of 28 days, if you study up on it and read the curve, it significantly slows down curing and gaining strength. So you take
So
the
at
50
28 days, what is it at? 80%, 90%?
It's probably over 90%.
Okay,
I'd say closer to 95%.
okay.
So you were saying, Dan, it's gonna potentially go up toward 5,000, 5,200 or so in there. My question is, what does it need to be?
That's
You
my
know,
question.
where does, because I deal a lot in this kind of engineering world, and always wonder sometimes where some absolute numbers come from. So,
Right.
is 4,000 adequate for a sidewalk load? Is 5,000 adequate for a sidewalk load?
I think 5,000, so you have to remember, the 28 days is a benchmark in time.
Yeah.
In other words, we're testing something along the curve of how that concrete cures. And so what we have used as our benchmark is we're looking for 4,000 PSI at 20 days. That concrete works for us. And, you know, a bridge girder or something else will be a totally different number.
Right.
But for us, we're looking at 4,000 at 28 days.
Is that an industry standard for sidewalks?
Yeah.
So, my question is, it never reached 4,000, even after all this time, right?
Right.
How do you know?
Because you tested it.
Prove it to me. I can prove otherwise. You just read the papers, Gary.
You told us what the test results were.
The test result was 3830.
Okay, it's not 4,000.
But I think what he's
The
also
correction
I
factor is
understand what he's
15%.
saying.
Yeah, what he did point out, though, is the variables that sounds like from this University of Wisconsin thing as to what the actual differential could mean. That's what's kind of an interesting
I want to
fact.
look at the contract, not at the University of Wisconsin's
No, but I'm looking at
opinions or anyone else's. The contract is what's got to be lived up to.
The people don't put all this stuff together because it's an opinion. This stuff has been studied and researched and tried, and it's true.
Well, the question in the specification, did it reference a ASTM or ACI or any of these other agencies?
In what?
Specification.
In the specification, was there a professional organization or standard writing organization this was referenced?
No.
Whether it was ASTM or ACI?
It said
No,
4,000.
Just that the concrete testing has to be done to the accepted standards.
You guys really haven't proved to me that it's not 4,000. I mean, it could have been 4,100 at 28 days because it significantly slows down at 28 days. And if it's 15%,
But what you're
then it's 4,400.
suggesting, Travis, is that the test results themselves at 3830 could be off by as much as 15%. That's the part I don't understand.
Correct. Remember we talked about this in when we were talking about the Public Works when I 1st got here. And well, I could sit here all night and read you these papers, but
Which we can't do, but you understand that. Yep.
it plainly tells you if you read these. It gives you the factors of why it could be 15% off.
Okay.
When you drill the core, you're fracturing the top of the mortar, you're fracturing your aggregates, you're taking a core that's that big around out of who knows how big. It could be they could have took the core where somebody stepped in a hole and filled it in with all mortar and not any stone. There's so much.
Okay.
And when you take a cylinder and it's cast and you take it to the engineer's place, those are ideal conditions to curing concrete.
So if we set that aside, the issue of the pressure testing, and we look at the thickness, what's the issue on that? 5-inch thick.
To me, it's a pretty cheap trick to pull a 1/2 inch on somebody, but when I call the engineer,
Who's pulling it?
So it's 4.5 inches?
I didn't
Is that-
ask you to talk.
Okay.
When I call the engineer at 1 o'clock the day before we pour, I say, hey man, we're going to pour at 2 o'clock tomorrow afternoon. So we get there in the morning, get to work, and the engineer shows up at 8 o'clock. He's taking pictures, writing stuff down, blah, blah, blah. Isn't that why you're paying him?
What?
Quality control? And
Right,
you-
then he should have said to the,
You should have said, hey, it's 4 3/4
It's 4
inch.
3/4, not
You can't
5.
pour that.
Aren't you measuring it when you set your forms up?
Well, I'm not going to measure to 1/4 inch for a sidewalk.
Okay. So is that what it is, 1/4 inch? Dan?
1/4 to a 1/2.
It's like a paragraph, second to fifth paragraph that's up there. Says they're 4 3/4, 4 5/16, 1/2.
When you go buy a 2x4, you get a 2x4, or you get an 1.5 by 3.5.
Susan, does the Public Works Committee want to take a look at any of this documentation?
I mean, we can certainly do that. Like I said, we didn't have the benefit of
Right.
that when we looked at it before.
Understand
I couldn't explain this to you before.
Never
Every
gives a
direction I
chance.
went was automatic, no, no, no.
I don't think that's fair, Travis. I mean,
I know it was.
if you had
Okay.
brought that information, I certainly would have had us.
I brought
look
up
at
the
it.
15% at that meeting.
But not the other information that you have. And I certainly would have listened to you, and you know that. I have never treated
Right
you
here,
unfair.
this letter should have been enough information to listen.
I think if you had other information, we would have listened to that. You're the one who chose to leave the discussion, and that,
Well, what's the sense of discussing something when you're talking to a stone?
Okay, let's.
so,
we're-
I mean,
we're-
that's the thing.
Here's
like-
here's the point, Travis. My suggestion is that we take a look at, if you want to leave us copies of this, take a look at it.
Mhm.
If the committee wants to reconsider it, I'll leave that up to the committee and then make a recommendation to the board.
That sounds good.
Um,
We'll, at our next
We had
meeting,
agreed
we'll
the last
discuss.
time that we would retest and then revisit this after the retest, and that's where we are today,
Okay, I think that's fair.
okay?
Does that
Can the
information have the
information be shared
ASTM
with the rest
numbers
of the
on it?
committee?
The
Right.
reference
It's got
number?
everything,
Rest
yeah.
of the board.
Standard number.
Yep.
What is the
Yep.
You
ASTM
guys or-
standard
With
number?
us.
Oh,
with the
yeah,
board.
sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, always.
Is that okay with the rest of the board?
Yeah.
Yeah, I was just
ASTM.
trying to do some reading, it's quick reading. I guess one of
Yeah.
the questions I have is, so it does continue to cure. How many days were these cores taken at?
110.
Yeah. So if it's more than 95% cured, it's not likely to change.
Right.
Oh,
Never met the 28-day standard.
but you don't know that.
I think it's worth looking at the information that he's
Mhm.
got with us,
Yeah.
and I
Okay.
think figure out what the, figure out what the influence of the 15% is,
Okay.
and then we're looking at whether it's the letter of the contract versus whether the sidewalk actually is a good sidewalk.
Yep.
In the end, and
Sounds
so
good.
are we gonna make the decision based on the criteria of the contract, or whether or not this information would lead us to believe that we've got a good sidewalk, one or the other?
Okay.
Just from my knowledge, the ASTM standard number is what?
C42
C42,
/ C42M.
42M, and the ACI is?
Oh, let's see here. NRMCA.
NRMCA.
Yep. Their CIP numbers, one is 9, one is 10, and one is 35.
Good. So if you can get Kathleen copies of that, Travis, we'll consider that information and then go from there.
As far as the thickness, if I have to give you a 1 or 2 or 3 years warranty on it, I will.
Okay? Okay. Susan, why don't we do the rest of the Public Works Committee stuff?
Sounds great.
Okay?
Thank you.
So we had a update on the Creek Road, the gravel section repair that was just done by Markowski. They completed the work at a cost of, their bid was $29,239, but the cost of the additional stone was another $29,503.11. And there's been some new areas of concern that have opened up along this road since then, so it's just good to keep on the radar. There was 3 interviews done based on the grant that was written for engineering study hosted by the Addison County Regional Planning Commission for looking at the section of road that's been closed. I don't know, has there been a decision? I was sick for that, so the interviews.
I think Kathleen was trying to get a meeting with Tim Boughton and the
Okay.
rest of us on Thursday.
So we're getting close.
Good.
Getting close to that. Anything else you wanted to say on that, Dan? Terry Arnold came by, updated the committee on her fundraising efforts for the covered bocce court, talking about how she needs matching funds for the $13,500 state recreation grant and wanted to use $12,500 that's in her capital improvement amount set aside for field improvements, along with a $1,000 private donation that she has. and she confirmed that this money was part of the 2017-18 budget, and construction would not begin until summer of 2017. So it was good for the board to know that she may want to take that money out from the field
Sure.
improvements and put it into something else. We also reviewed and approved the capital improvement budget since the Energy Committee withdrew their request for $5,000. And in the new budget that we just approved, capital improvements total is $870,424. We had an inquiry about the maintenance near the powerhouse. Mr. Eichinger has an easement with Malt for the use and maintenance of the pathway to the powerhouse for access to his property. And there's an erosion problem on the pathway from the runoff of the other buildings in the area. And Mr. Eichinger felt that he shouldn't bear all the expenses for these repairs. So we sort of took a look at everything, had a nice discussion about the issues, and decided that Heather Seeley and Dan are going to view the area during a large rain event before we proceed with anything else. Does that sound good? We've already accepted the equipment replacement in budget, but I think, we were going to revisit, and it was the bucket versus budget. That was the only thing we revisited. So I don't think we need to go that. Did you want to do project updates?
Before we leave the equipment,
Yeah,
I just
sure.
wanted to follow up on, there was one piece of equipment that, the replacement of a truck, that, I remember last year we appropriated $15,000 in hopes of finding something fairly new, but not brand new in that price range, and that was not used, so now we're looking at spending $30,000 for, is that the same vehicle that we were looking at considering last year?
To briefly say it, we feel the best used truck we have
Yeah.
is the rec department's truck.
Yeah.
40,000 miles roughly. It's a 2007 model. That truck will move to use it for the mechanics to use.
Okay.
So that solves their
That goes where that one was going to go.
Yeah.
Correct.
And the one that they use now, the Ford Ranger, which was a water department truck years ago, that one goes away.
Okay.
So then the rec department gets a highway department truck, which is, I believe, the 2013, which has a lift gate on it, which helps Ivan with his,
Mhm.
and other things that need to move to the rec department and his snow blower and things like that. He's now using ramps to get snow blower on and off. So we felt that would work for him, and he's using that this winter. So what that means is then the current truck that's used for where the supervisor with a plow truck goes and replaces the lift truck that went to Ivan, and then we're just looking for a basic four-wheel drive that's used for the supervisor's truck. So it's a little bit of a kind of mix and match the needs, what we have already.
Okay.
There'll be a quiz later.
Okay, so you took the 15 grand and banked it and put it together with another 15 to
Yeah.
get a new truck and pass the other one along. Okay,
Right.
that's helpful. Sorry.
No, I did the exact same thing in the meeting. I'm like, what?
It's classic who's on first.
Yeah, it was. This is going over here, goes over
Okay.
there.
Which shell is the pea on?
Do you want to do project updates, or should we just move on? What do you want to do?
Just a couple things. Probably the most important one is the Creek Road reconstruction sidewalk project. Last week, or last time you ordered the contractor Du Bois and King to do that work, I met with a representative from Du Bois and King last week. We are on schedule to get that advertised for bid on February 3rd. There will be a 3 to 4 week bid process. A pre-bid meeting will be held, and then you will see, the board will see it in the first meeting in March for approval of the bids to get that project going. So far it's on schedule. The best time, this is the best time to bid it for bid climate. The water monitoring project is we have to have a project approved by the state by April 1, and so I've met with Wayne Elliott of Aldridge and Elliott to get moving on that one too.
Great. Anything else, Susan?
No, I think that's it.
Questions for Susan or Dan? Thank you.
Thanks, Dan.
You're welcome.
Next committee report, I'm going to jump down, if it's okay, to the Library Building Committee, since John Frieden is here. And although, John, you're welcome to stay for the whole meeting, you don't have to.
Thank you very much. Appreciate it.
So, John, we've added the documents that you sent out by email into our packet.
Good.
But it would be great to go through that.
Okay. Just a quick update, short update. Between February and May of last year, the Library Building Committee did not meet because it was awaiting the work of the Ilsley trustees and their completion of a long-range plan. As we started to work on this, it became clear to the Building Committee that we needed to know what the trustees of the library really thought were the goals that the library should have over the next 5, 10, 15 years or more, so that we could guide our assessment of the building in terms of how well suited it would be to achieve those goals. After the trustees did, I thought, very good work, and had the help of Barbara Doyle Wilch, who is a library consultant. And when she reviewed their work, she said, I asked her to review it and let me know what she thought the building committee should do next. And she said, I think it's time to talk to an architect. So we started at that point in reviewing the documents from the trustees, understanding them, asking some questions about them. Kevin Unrath, the director of the library, is always at our meetings. And then once we felt we digested them adequately, we started to draft a request for qualifications to architectural firms, asking to find out whether they were qualified to provide further counsel as to what would be the best way to meet the needs as determined by the library trustees. So at this point, we have drafted and agreed and voted upon the language of a request for proposal, a request for qualifications, excuse me. And I'm here to let you know that and to answer any questions you might have about it. I believe the other documents that I sent to Dean and that you've now received are the strategic plan, which starts with a mission statement and 4 guiding principles, an appendix to that which elaborates on those guiding principles, and a list of deficiencies in the building. I believe those are the documents you have. I don't want to go through them, but I will be glad to try to clarify anything or answer any questions you have.
Questions for John? Or anything that Susan or Nick, I know you're both on this building committee, want to add to that?
I think we're ready. So.
Okay.
Yeah, no, I think the work that the trustees in the library have done have been very admirable in helping to, well, for them to help understand who they are and where they are and hopefully where they're going. So I agree. We're time to put this request for qualifications. I think we have 17 firms. We're
15 or 17
firms. I mean, all some really good firms with some really good library expertise. So I think we're going to get some very good responses, and then we're probably looking at it, and then shortly afterwards go to the proposal stage and see what's actually going to cost for this assessment. I think this is a very good, logical direction to go, and I think we're going to get a good product out of this. So.
Yeah, I would. The only thing I would add to that is that I think it's been very beneficial to the library and to the town that because we established or you established with the trustees this building committee, the library really was motivated to do a long-range plan, which it hadn't done. And clearly, we couldn't have fulfilled the charge made to the library building committee unless that work had been done. We should have realized that at the go, but none of us had ever served on a similar committee. So we're there now, and if you have questions, I'm glad to answer.
John, do you want to talk at all about the financing part of that? I know
Yeah.
you've had a lot of work, excuse me, done in that regard too, which many people aren't aware of.
Yep. There was a bit of an exaggeration in the Addison Independent about the raising of money. I do not think that the trustees of the library have ever really expected that they could raise every nickel that it would cost to do this work. They clearly realize that this is a division of the town department, but it's a special kind of situation, and the trustees want to raise as much money as they possibly can. And at this point, we really have no idea either what we could raise or what the project might cost. We do need to determine what we can raise, what can be raised privately. We need to commission a capacity study, a study of the capacity and interest in the town to contribute to changes in the library. I think that in order to do that well, we need to have a little bit more substance than just the materials we currently have, so that we can explain to people what it is we're trying to do, not just what our goals are. So we're working our way toward that. And the library has some money. I don't know whether it has all the money necessary for a fundraising study, but it has some of that. But I'm not here to talk about that in any specificity.
No, but I think it's helpful to know that it's going to be a project that's going to go through probably a public-private partnership combination type of thing, and in the end, you're going to have a pretty well-defined project before you begin to look at that.
Yes.
And go in that direction.
We're definitely, we hope so, and I think, it would be foolish for us to have anything less.
Yep. Great.
And we have a very good committee, and everybody's worked hard and done extra work. We now have one vacancy on our committee, but I think we have found a person to fill that position. I just received an email from him this evening, which essentially says that he will help, and his name is John McLeod. He's an architect in Middlebury and a member of the college faculty. At my invitation, he attended our meeting yesterday afternoon, just so that he could get a sense of really what we were up to. And the committee, I think, was very, very pleased to have his help and very impressed with the substance of what he added.
Well, I think we made it quite clear we didn't want to let him go until he agreed.
He came at a really good time.
He really did, he did.
Yeah, it's an ideal time for us to have an architect.
He explained all kinds of things of time management that we would help him, so.
John, is the strategic plan on the website?
Yes, it will be. If it isn't already, it will be on the Ilsley Library website. In fact, when we send out the request for qualifications, which is scheduled to be for the 1st of February, it will refer the recipients to the website with 4 documents, those being the long-range plan, the appendix to that, the list of insufficiencies in the building. And maybe, I don't know what the 4th one is.
It's really helpful to have that as public stuff, because I went to the library website, and all I could find I could find the mission statement. I couldn't find I couldn't find the other documents. So.
The document that's labeled mission statement also says strategic plan. And so the strategic plan is a very short document. And so it may be that what you thought was the mission statement, because the mission statement is really, I don't know, 3 or 4, 3 words in a sentence.
Right.
So this is it. But I hear what you're saying, and we're on top of that, I think.
Okay.
And I will make sure, I'll speak to Kevin to make sure.
Yeah, I thought it needed to be more detailed than that, John. I think it's great going out for request for quotation. I did read this one. I just thought it was sort of brief.
It is
The
brief,
strategic
very
plan.
deliberately brief. That we went through many iterations.
Yeah.
But it is enhanced by the appendix,
Okay.
which is about 6 pages. And if you'd like this copy, I can give it to you.
Sure, I'd love it. Thank you.
Other questions for John? So one of the things that the committee is asking is that the board approve the release of the RFQ for the architectural services. What is the pleasure of the board?
I'll make a motion to approve the release of the request for qualifications for the Ilsley Library.
Architectural services.
Architectural assessment services for the Ilsley Library, that's right.
Is there a second?
Second.
Seconded by Laura. Any further discussion on that motion? Those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? We are 7 in favor and none absent. Thank you, John.
I like the vote. Thank you very much.
Good presentation, thank you.
Okay, I'm going to dance around. We've got a lot of committee reports tonight, and since Jamie is here and Jason as well, but we'll start with the Business Development and Innovation Fund Advisory Board meeting of January 13th.
Thank you, Dean.
Jamie.
I appreciate it. For starters, our meeting was January 6th. It was not the 13th.
Okay.
Our regular meeting is the first Wednesday of the month, and our guest on January 6th was Caleb Rick. He's a gentleman with whom I've been engaged for about 1.5 years. He represents a company called Ecopolymer. He's a graduate of Middlebury College, and he has access to a proprietary technology that enables a process around recycling LDPE, low-density polyethylene. It's most commonly known as the plastic bags that we get at the grocery store, right? So this is a common problem across this country and in other countries on other continents. Such a problem that, to put it in context, I believe that the state of California has prohibited the distribution of these bags at grocery stores and other convenience stores. That they're that much of a problem. And in this country, specifically in Vermont, my understanding is approximately 95% of this type of plastic ends up in a landfill. Even if it goes to a recycling center, there's no market for it, so it ends up in a landfill. So the material, the source material that Mr. Rick is interested in utilizing would have a very positive environmental impact. And his intention is to build a manufacturing facility out in the industrial park. So he was kind enough to come to committee. We spoke for about 2 hours. He individually followed up with other members of the MBDF advisory board, and I have suggested to him that he reach out to members of the select board as well. So if he has not, he will be soon. He's very interested. He's connected to Middlebury, and he has several products, several prototypes that were all developed here in Middlebury. He has a team of approximately 10 or 12 people that are helping him get this company off the ground, and that was exciting for me. Again, it's something that I've been helping him with for approximately 1.5 years.
And the products are, just a quick summary, they're an interlocking type of panel that can support the weight of a vehicle, such as a power company has to go back and access an area and the road, the soil conditions.
They're called road plates or mats, right? And so access mats, either for protecting vegetation or accessing a site that is otherwise inaccessible. So these mats are used by companies like Green Mountain Power and Velco and the contractors that work for Vermont Gas. They're also used by companies that build telecommunication towers, and they're a substitute for wooden road mats, large timbers that are connected together to build temporary roadways, right? In some parts of the country, I think down south, Mr. Rick found an RFP for a company to come in and provide a solution that would build a temporary roadway 5 miles long using mats. So we believe that his prototypes, he has several at this point in time, compare favorably with the wooden mat industry on a whole bunch of different variables, and hopefully he can get some traction from a customer perspective and move forward with this project. Yeah. So he is in conversation with Velco and Green Mountain Power. He's got a very, very favorable response from the forestry, State Forestry Association, and he's working through Vermont Gas to get access to their primary contractor that'll be doing most of the work here in Vermont, extending the pipeline.
Huge market for federal agencies like the Forest Service and the Park Service for these things. Yeah.
Right. So that's ecopolymer.
So before you leave that, I just want to say I had the opportunity to meet with Caleb this morning, and I know Brian has met with him as well. And
I have also.
And you have as well. Good, Laura. And I suggested that he get an opportunity down the road to meet with the other board members. But
excellent.
I know
Yes.
Caleb from, maybe 5 or 6 years ago when, as a member of the Actor Board, we were beginning to look at the prospect of doing a capital campaign to get the local contribution for the $4 million Actor Transit Facility. And Caleb was a consultant on that at the time and provided us with a lot of guidance on how to proceed with the capital campaign. But that set aside, he has been working on this project for several years, and one of the strong things that I came away from with that was there are a lot of communities that would really love to have this business in their backyard. And what he was really impressed with was yourself.
Well, that's very kind.
He has met with a lot of other communities and talked with various committees and people that do the type of work that you do. But he was very impressed with Jamie's presentation and his willingness to assist him in a number of different areas to help him be guided in this direction. And he wants to use rail for essentially his exclusive bringing product in and shipping it out. So we're not looking at, burdening our highways with additional truck traffic. And the potential volume of material that would come in here is fantastic.
We measure it by the ton, that's correct.
Yeah, and I think it would take all of what Vermont generates and then some, with a goal of obviously growing the business to some degree.
And potentially expanding the business to other locations across the country, having that expansion headquartered and having the primary research and development piece headquartered here in Middlebury.
It is not just the footprint pads used for building roads, but they're experimenting with replacing concrete and paved sidewalks with this material.
That is correct.
And it's proved to be very durable, good traction.
They also use this material for manhole covers. They use it for flooring, for pallets, for transportation pallets. Thank you.
Actually describes the company, when he met with our committee, he describes it more as a materials company than a product company, because they can build just
they could put it into
manufactures about anything with that material. So what he's trying to establish is a manufacturing plant, and having maybe maybe it's the road plates, maybe it's something else as his first product, but once the material and his process gets better known, that he could manufacture for some other vendor, manufacture their products for them.
We've spent a lot of time at this point trying to make sure, I have spent a lot of time trying to help Caleb make sure he's not chasing everything.
Yeah.
Right, so there are a lot of options out there.
One that we can promote and establish, and he spoke very highly of Jamie's assistance and the fact that Jamie has shown genuine effort to provide him what he needs, and he's committed to try to make it work here in Middlebury, and so I think that comes across very clearly.
That is exciting, and just a couple more highlights from the list that was provided in your packet. I think most of you are aware that the DRB had a hearing last night with regard to the Middlebury State Airport, and my understanding is that the DRB is going to move forward with their deliberation, I believe. I think it's the 21st or the 22nd of February. I think that is the next milestone associated with the airport. They did close the hearing last night, though, so that's a step forward from a VTrans perspective. I'm also connected, number 5 on my list, the Middlebury Food Group. I'm also connected to a gentleman named Peter Dragone, and Mr. Dragone was one of the founders of Keurig. He and his friends from college actually built the first prototypes for that company, the coffee maker company. And he is also, he lives down in Massachusetts outside of Boston. He also does some work with an entrepreneurship center at the Woods Hole Oceanographic Institute, and he's connected to some entrepreneurship efforts at Massachusetts Institute of Technology. He's interested in investing. He and his brothers are interested in investing in a slaughter and processing facility here in Middlebury and potentially a cold storage and distribution facility. So that's exciting for me, working with Mr. Dragone. Outside of that, the last thing that I wanted to bring to your attention specifically, this Thursday at 7 p.m. at the Middlebury Inn, I am hosting a town hall style meeting with Chris Campbell, who is the consultant from the Tilson Technology Management Group, who we have hired to do the analysis around a fiber broadband network here in Middlebury. If you remember back in May or June of last year, I brought a proposal forward from Tilson. Tilson is a firm based in Maine. Both of their, not only the founder, but the current president and CEO are graduates of Middlebury College, and Mr. Campbell is the former executive director of the Vermont Telecommunications Authority. He and I are hosting an event. Again, it's Thursday the 28th at 7 p.m. at the Middlebury Inn, and that is open to the public. Outside of that, happy to answer any questions you guys might have.
Thank you, Jamie. Questions for Jamie?
Back to Echo Polymer.
Yes, ma'am.
So it sounds like the thing that's attracting him to Middlebury, like why Middlebury, is that he's getting coached.
That is part of it, yes.
Is there anything else that we should know that would be part of criteria to?
He's got to have
anchor
rail
him?
access, and the college has a property that's a potential candidate that's would have rail access. He does have connection with the college.
Mm-hmm.
He's he enjoys the tremendous amount of innovation in the area. People that there's a lot of intellectual talent in the area, and so there's a number of reasons why he's explained that he likes this area. But I think the guiding thing for him has been that he feels welcome, and he feels that he's getting the assistance. He was doing this on his own, and Jamie stepped up and gave him a lot of assistance. Other places that he went to, he didn't get that same feeling. And when in business, it's nice to know you're wanted.
And he is thinking long range. I mean, as he drove out, he looked at the Hannaford Career Center and said, what a great opportunity to have a workforce training opportunity.
He's also met with Lynn Cole recently, and so there's a whole host of things that make this place attractive, as Brian alluded to, sort of the intellectual infrastructure around what he thinks long-term is the R&D piece, right, the research and development piece, what different products are going to be available, and what innovative ways might we be able to have a positive impact on the environment. He thinks in those sort of terms. He's also very interested in partnering from a social capital perspective, supporting what I would refer to as social infrastructure in and around Middlebury. So he, as an example, one of the things that he and I have talked about is when his facility is up and running, he's very interested in providing free lunch to all of his employees, as one example of social infrastructure, right? Not many companies here in Middlebury do that sort of thing. But
Okay, thank you.
sure.
Great. Anything else? Thank you, Jamie.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Rachel, we move to the Energy Committee. Jason? And Laura?
Hi, good. So just some highlights from our January meeting. As has been touched upon already, the committee passed a motion to withdraw our $5,000 capital improvements budget request to help alleviate budget pressures, and that was incorporated into the budget draft that was just approved today. We've got our transportation survey coming out pretty shortly here. This is a partnership with Go Vermont, and the purpose is to gain an understanding of Middlebury residents' transportation practices and needs. It's going to be open to all Middlebury residents 18 and older who are not students. The survey period runs from February 17th to March 16th. We'll have options so the survey can be taken online, or we'll have paper copies available at town meeting, at the polls the next day, and at the town clerk's office for the duration of the survey. And in a couple of weeks, we'll begin outreach to try and get as many responses as we can. Looking towards spring, believe it or not, we were joined by Elizabeth Golden Pigeon, who has been the managing director of the Sustainable Living Expo, which is a celebrated annual event in town here. This year, a similar but new event is being planned to take its place. Similar purpose of just building connections in the community around food, energy, wellness, these kinds of things. The Energy Committee passed a motion to be a co-presenter of the event, which has the potential to result in some revenue for the committee, as well as further some of our goals. Right now, the planning is sort of in a feasibility stage, so we're tuned into updates and progress to see if we can actually help pull this off. Kathy Bloom is the creator of the climate and sustainability game called Vermontivate, and she came to our meeting to give us a presentation to get the committee excited about this year's game, which starts on March 21st. It's designed to be a fun challenge that encourages folks to take action in categories like food, energy, transportation, health. For example, Kathy was telling us that a team in Calais challenged themselves to create a bus route to Montpelier and to build a community route cellar. Kathy explained that any number of people with any kind of affiliation can create a team. The Energy Committee may field a team. Maybe the Select Board would be interested in fielding a team. Sign-ups for that begin March 1st. And finally, just looking toward February, at the request of the Planning Commission, we'll be reviewing the energy section of the town plan and providing suggestions for an update.
Great.
And we'll also be discussing drafting our game plan for 2016.
And you also provided us a year in review annual report copy.
Right. Yeah.
Thank you. Questions for Jason?
Well, that was a good summary. The only thing that we didn't get to in that very packed meeting was preparing for town meeting, which we have been. Jason did the report, but the other thing we typically do is like a poll survey, which is different than the transportation survey. And we've been talking tonight about other questions that we might ask, and so maybe we'll take a look at that.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, typically it's just been from the Energy Committee, and another thing we can do is make it,
Put it right next to the Doyle survey.
Well, it is like that, and people do like to fill it out.
They do,
And it's just
yeah.
a way, it's not very scientific necessarily, but it does give you some indication, and it gives people an opportunity to write comments, so it's just another good feedback tool. So I'll talk to Kathleen and others about that tool to see whether it's a dedicated energy committee poll or it's a town poll that includes energy questions and others.
Great, thank you. Thank you, Jason. Appreciate you waiting around.
Yeah, thanks.
Parks and Recreation. Donna, are you covering that one?
I am covering that one. I have my notes here. Parks and Recreation meeting of January 12th. We had several reports. I'm going to keep this fairly brief because you've got the draft meeting notes, so I'm just going to go through these really quickly. The library had a great month in December, and really it is a great month. 156 gingerbread houses made by children there. That's not part of the, Shelburne Museum's, what is it, the Folk Life Centers. They do a different one. They had 75 people at the Grinch movie. They did a Hanukkah story time, and they did a countdown to New Year's. Tricia reported it was just a really great month there. Addison County Teens, they're working very hard on improvements over at the Warming Hut, and they are going to be holding a fundraiser at Carol's Hungry Mind. I did not have a date available yet, so as soon as that date's available, we'll announce it. Kyle Robinson from Malt talked about planning grants. They're working on the 4th edition of the TAM map. And he's going to also be working with Laura on the bike and gear swap April 30th and participating in the bike safety clinic. Memorial Sports Center, they are looking at curling, which in conjunction with the Parks and Rec Department, they're hoping to maybe find some equipment from the J. Peak Ice Center. Obviously, we talked about the face-off against breast cancer January 30th and 31st. Bill Ford wanted me to make sure we said thank you to the Select Board for the lights in the parking lot. I think I mentioned it when I was last here, but it's made a huge difference. I think the single biggest thing that we did at that meeting, and we've already seen that, is the 2016-2017 revenue budget would see an addition of $10 to programs, $2 going to a scholarship. There had been no increase in a decade. We discussed whether that was the appropriate amount to increase. It was a unanimous vote following our discussion. So those are the highlights. Actually, the bocce court funding was covered by Susan out of the Public Works Department meeting. That's it.
Great. Thank you, Donna. Any questions for Donna?
No, I just wanted to say a little bit more about the April 30th event, the bike and outdoor gear sale. So it's really blooming, and I just want the board to be aware of that. So what happened is that when we had the bike swap event last year, it was at Mary Hogan School, and we had 75 bikes, and they were all sold, and it was great, and there was a safety fair attached to it, but nobody really went through the safety fair, so we thought, let's just focus on the bike swap part, which is really a consignment sale. And what if we bring it to Cannon Park, because the railroad construction we anticipated to be underway, and we thought it would be a way to bring people to the downtown and really bring them in to shop locally. And then that gave Carl the idea of talking to Middlebury Mountaineer about whether he wanted to do something with the bike center, and he did. And then Carl also talked to Fourth and Goal, and they're interested. So it's like blooming into like a whole downtown sale, an event. So I mentioned that at the building committee, I think, too, the town office and rec center, because we were thinking about when we might celebrate the opening of the town office and rec center, and it could coincide with that day. So we're just brainstorming about that, and that might happen, and it might be really an exciting event where we might close off part of the Main Street and have tables and display, and the building's open, and maybe an EV demo event, because the charging stations are right down there, and just have a lot of buzz in town on April 30th. And it's also the day before the Maple Run, so we'd have a lot of out-of-towners that would also be visiting and shopping, interested in shopping. So it could be a very exciting weekend. So stay posted.
Okay, thank you, Laura. Town School Committee meeting. Neither Brian nor I were able to make it, so Kathleen covered ably for us.
It was a brief meeting, lasting just over 10 minutes. we went over briefly the update on Act 46 and school issues and working toward town meeting and the presentation there. We've been working with Anne on that as well. I had a brief update on the Recreation Center and Town Offices project and the railroad project. And the courts, then the board's vote at its last meeting on the Court Street Charles Avenue project.
And since that meeting, I've had a chance to talk with Ruth Hardy briefly about the coordination of the town meeting. And as you know, we've been discussing, they're going to start their meeting at 6 o'clock. And Ann and I were chatting yesterday about how this check-in process is going to work. There is a possibility, depending on how the direction goes with the discussion about the consolidation process, that it might bleed into a little bit beyond 7. We're hoping it'll be pretty close to that. But in the meantime, people that may be coming just for the town meeting portion of the annual event may be trickling in during the last part of that presentation. But people that are going to be checked in for the school portion of the meeting will also be checked in for town meeting, so they won't have to come back out and readmit themselves. And Ann is going to try to keep track of at least the people that come for the school meeting, and we'll add them to the town meeting portion of that.
We'll do a check-in for the school and mark that it's specifically for the school, but we're going to count those as towards town meeting as well. Because throughout the evening, you never know exactly who leaves and when they leave. And I've spoken to the Secretary of State's office, and one of the good things about the school meeting is that there's no actual voting for them at their meeting. So
Right. It's an information only. Right.
more important.
And so it may last a few minutes longer than 7, but we'll be, making ourselves ready to begin our process as soon as possible. The other good thing is that Jim Douglas has agreed to moderate both meetings, so there won't need to be a transition there from one to the next. Anything else?
Since the school thing is actually ultimately an ACSU, will it only be Middlebury residents can be in that first hour?
It's the Mary Hogan.
It's the ID4.
It's the ID4.
Yeah.
It's the ID4.
So, okay.
In the future, they'll have to have their own, if they
Okay.
consolidate.
Yes.
There'll be
I
one
didn't know
meeting.
if some had to leave at the
Yeah.
end of the first hour.
This all passes and goes through with the merger. This year's a little weird, and next town meeting would also be a little strange because there's both boards that would be functioning.
Right.
The other thing I just wanted to quickly mention, too, it had come to my attention by a few people that one of the issues in the consolidation was the accumulation of real estate debt and property amongst the towns consolidating, and the fact that the recreation facilities are on ID4 property, and what would happen to that, and would it make sense to consider divesting that portion of the property from ID4 before it becomes part of the consolidated district? Ruth didn't think their board would be supporting that necessarily, thinking that just quickly that this may be an issue where if they ever want to expand, they need to have the available property. I'm not sure it would ever get to the point of where the pool and Memorial Sports Center and tennis courts are, but I don't know. But I just wanted to let her know as well, and you may have heard this as well, that this is a potential issue, and I think it's going to be a fairly close vote. And I hope it's one of the things that their board discusses before town meeting.
Think of a thing no matter what, like the whole transfers of land and things like that. You'd be thinking you'll have probably a new lease on the recreation.
I don't know.
We don't know.
Yeah.
Transfer of that.
Yeah. Anyways.
The transfer would have to come before the vote.
Yeah, once the vote has occurred, then my understanding and looking at that, the language in there is if any town, any school property was going to be sold, it had to go to the town first that it exists in. So if down the road they decided to sell some of that property or not use it, they would have to provide the town the first opportunity to acquire it.
Would that also apply for the new rec center too?
Could.
Okay.
Yep.
What, the new rec center?
Yeah, that's in a lease with, or a contract with UD3, which would be part of this consolidated group.
They actually own the physical, the land itself?
Mm-hmm.
Number 3 does.
Yeah.
Yeah, because they bought that.
Yeah, all right.
So on all the lands of all the different towns, if the merger goes through, has to be transferred actually to this unified district.
Right,
Mm-hmm.
right. Anyways.
Interesting.
So that's why the discussion could go on a bit. But anyways, we'll be ready. Anything else on the school committee? Any questions?
Well, so there's not going to be anything preceding the 6 o'clock meeting in terms of
No.
meeting people or anything like that? So we're just going to go through a marathon night? Okay.
Bring your sandwich. Okay. Local project management team. And I can quickly fill us in on that, Nick. And Donna, help me out if I missed something. We met last week. We're meeting again this week. We began focusing, and I think we might have talked briefly about this, on our development of a matrix to help us to make a final determination where the relocation of the transit services is going to be located, at least on a temporary basis. And we've had a lot of good input from both Jim Moulton from Actor and our committee members, and have what I think is a pretty comprehensive matrix to look at. And so hopefully we're going to finalize that Thursday and be able to move forward on that. As of yesterday, we did get initial copies of the report from VHB on the vertical clearance, both cost savings and construction time savings. The committee has not had a chance yet to discuss it, but we will be working that into our meeting as well on Thursday, with the idea that we would be meeting with VHB, VTrans, and the construction manager for this project to kind of nail down what those issues really represent. This tells us roughly what their estimated cost savings would be and what the estimated time savings would be. It didn't address whether or not the vertical clearance is supported or not, and whether it could be. So those are things we've got to put together with these two components, but it's the beginning of that process. So we will have a brief discussion about that with a follow-up meeting, hopefully scheduled next week, on that issue. We'd like to get that done well ahead of this being presented to the Rail Commission later in February.
And they were doing also an analysis of the remainder of this western corridor as to
The other pinch points.
the other pinch points.
Right.
Yeah. And when did they expect to have that?
There was an attempt to schedule a conference meeting today, which we
Okay.
couldn't get going, but we're looking at potentially next Monday
Okay.
as the time to have that.
Can we have a more fleshed out discussion about the property over at Greg's Meat Market and that kind of stuff? And we had sort of a very tentative conversation about it, but I've heard it mentioned several times, and I'd like to, especially based on what the email that came in too. I mean, I feel like that sort of tentative conversation is gotten out there. So
the email, the conversation that Kathleen, I don't know if you want to speak to that at all.
Well, let me finish this first. That I really want to have that sort of put the feelers out was what I was approving, and people are asking me, have we approved buying land over there? And
No, we haven't, and I will speak to that if we can have Kathleen just cover her meeting first, and I will cover all of that.
Right. Okay.
Let's do that first.
Okay. Briefly, I met with Dan Delabrere of Vermont VTrans Rail Division, and he said that VTrans is putting forward a grant application for construction of a passenger rail platform in Middlebury. The default location for that would be at the rail siding just north of Middlebury Discount Beverage, but he did ask for the town's input on where the passenger rail platform would best be located.
So what we're really looking, this came out of that meeting back in late July, and before that meeting, I first became aware of it from the Planning Commission, and we looked at the maps, and we found that essentially the parking area between what used to be Greg's and the Redemption Center is all part of this parcel of land. Well, and there's about, I think, a total of 3 acres
Mhm.
of property that goes beyond that, and potentially would be a site that the town could use for its multimodal station if it decided to go in that direction. But what we're looking to do is not buy it, but if the state is not using this property for anything, and it used to be the old rail bed property, then what we're looking to do is to acquire it from the state so that we can determine how we would want to use it, be it for a multimodal station or maybe some other economic development should Greg's Market,
Okay.
that facility, become available. This piece of property is right in the middle of that and really precludes from anyone developing it any meaningful way, whether it be the town or somebody privately. So we're thinking this is a chip that the state could really use to help the town out with by, when we're looking for some of the mitigating issues around this rail project. If that property is not being used by the rail or the state, and yet the state owns it, and we have some really strong desires to use it for whatever, it makes good sense for us to try to negotiate getting it, but not to purchase it, but to
Okay.
have it.
That's
Yeah.
it. Acquiring has many meanings.
It certainly does, yeah.
And that for me is like, I want to definitely weigh in on that as it progresses, because I think it's a good point, but I want to be careful about the monetary acquisition side of things too.
Absolutely.
So,
And there's never been any discussion about purchasing it.
right.
And what happens is, we brought it up 3 times now.
Right.
We haven't got any responses back.
Right.
And
And
so we
that's-
keep pushing the issue. We don't think it should be something the town has to purchase.
Okay.
We think it should be something that the state should realize it doesn't need. It's not being used, and yet it makes good sense for our potential development in a lot of different areas to have this property.
Are you guys finding on this committee that you're sort of expanding? You've got the one train bridges project, but then you've got this other thing sort of cooking over with the multimodal station. Is that becoming something that you need to split off into other committees, or is it?
This committee is not looking at how to use that property. We're just throwing that in. You remember we had a list of like a dozen things that we wanted them to
Right,
consider?
but I'm just saying, I know that Kathleen and Nick have been looking at different things too. Is
Right,
there something?
but that's not part of this committee.
Right, but I'm just saying, there's definitely conversation crossover, and at what point do we start saying, should we be looking at it, at maybe another committee to look at that? I don't know if we're there yet, but
I don't think we are, Susan. I really think the important thing from the local project management team perspective is, can we somehow acquire this property for the town, and not determining with them how it's going to be used. And then if it happens, then the board can decide, okay, now we have this property, how do we want to go about using it? Do we want to have a committee that Nick and Kathleen are working on expanded to look at those various uses? The planning commission is looking at how that property might be developed. But the first thing is, how can we obtain it? And if this avenue provides us the means to obtain it, I don't see the management team directing what happens with it once it gets it. It just kind of puts it in our quiver and says, okay.
I'm not saying anything, I'm just asking, at a certain point, is your focus kind of, because last time when we were talking about the intensity of it, you were asking for some help. So it just seemed to be one way to sort of relieve some of the intensity of the amount of stuff you guys are looking at. So at some point, do you want to separate that out? And it's something that I'm thinking about as we go along.
Sure. Yeah.
Because it becomes, it's you're talking to the same people for a long time, but at some point you really sort of need to look at it differently.
It's not part of this project, you're right.
Right,
Yeah.
and we want to be looking at the whole thing holistically of where does this station go, what does that do, and what they're asking for from the state. Do we have to get any information for them together immediately?
If we have any preliminary feedback, they'd love to receive that by right after our next meeting, which is on February 9th.
But do we really have anything to sort of give them other than?
I don't think so.
If you want to put it on the agenda and discuss it then.
Okay.
Well, is that one of the sites that we're looking at for a, that is, right?
That's actually emerging as the most logical site for a variety of reasons. Getting back to your question, the answer is maybe. I mean, at this point, they're two exclusive projects, mutually but
Right.
but you're right. They're melding together,
Right.
And it certainly can look like that. Let's say the bridge project is probably further along,
Mhm.
but there's a lot of really good work that's being done, especially by the various departments at the college, to have data
Mhm.
that we can use, and then ultimately decide what we want to do with that.
Right.
I mean, there are ideas that are emerging range from, well, certainly the multimodal station is the anchor, but then what other development could be built into there? And you see this around the country in various places, or actually in parts of the world too, where they build in some sort of housing project or commercial, and it helps to fund the cost of the multimodal. So, and getting back to your question, it's likely to happen, but we're not quite there yet.
Well, the one question I had about they were saying that the platform had to be on railroad property, but something about that it had to be managed, the actual station had to be managed by the town. So how does that work with the property that's there?
So I think what they were trying to say is that, yes, they're going to fund the railroad platform, but none of the
None of the
ancillary, no parking,
You're on your
no
own.
buildings.
Okay.
Right.
You get a nice big platform, and that's what you get.
Platform
Okay.
and maybe a
If you want a
plastic
building,
box.
you're on your own to get it.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay. Interesting. All right.
So, Susan, again, the only thing that I'm trying to, maybe I'm not explaining it well too, is that I see this committee, the local project management team, as just being the lever to try to figure out a way to get the property and not determine what happens with it or where
Right.
it goes, but
I got all that.
if there's a way to get it, let's figure that out.
No,
And-
I
Okay.
got that. So.
So the other thing we have talked about and wanted to bring to the board's attention is a letter of thanks to Bill Finger, who is, as we all know, has stepped away from being the community liaison on this project. So if everyone is agreeable to it, I would entertain a motion to approve the thank you letter on behalf of the select board.
Yeah,
Moved
I'll
by
second
Brian,
that.
seconded by Susan. Do we have that with us tonight?
I just signed it.
You did?
Did you sign it?
No, I signed the liquor control thing. I don't think that
There's
was,
a
Signed
blue
anything.
I
folder
haven't
with the
signed
letter in it.
anything.
This side of the room has signed nothing.
okay. So the motion's been made and seconded to approve the thank you letter. Any further discussion?
Well,
Those in favor signify by saying aye.
Hey, Laura wanted to say
not
something.
about the letter, but are we moving off of this agenda item, Dean?
Not yet.
Okay,
I got a question.
okay.
All those in favor, again, for approving the thank you letter, signify by saying aye.
Right.
Good. Anything else? Laura?
Well, I know, Donna, you look like you were about to mention the public forums,
The neighbors together?
neighbors
Well, I
together.
figured Dean was getting to that at some point. Dean, were you going to cover that?
Go ahead, Donna. You've been to the meeting.
Yeah, the neighbors, there was a group that originated with St. Stephen's Church. There are representatives, Ken Perrine is on that. So two of us, I come on from the select board. Ken Perrine is one of the local project management team members. There are Sue Hoxie from the Addison County Chamber of Commerce, Karen Dugay from the Better Millbrae Partnership. There's a group, anyway, that's come together, and they are looking ultimately for ways to support the town during the construction of the rail project. It's going to start with a community forum, and there will be two community forums on. The first one is to identify the values that we want to protect during the construction period. They'll have two sessions, one on Sunday, January 31st, and the other on Thursday, February 4th. The second round would be to develop an action plan, which will be concrete things that we can implement during the construction period that will benefit, will maintain the values that we hold here, but will also benefit the downtown during that construction period. And those two forums will take place, one on Sunday, February 21st, the other on Thursday, February 25th. This is a great group. It's just an incredibly positive group to work with. They've taken the approach that the project's going to take place, whether it's at 19 feet, 21 feet, doesn't matter what it's going to take, it's going to take place. And so, therefore, we should come up with a plan for how to lessen the impact, the negative impact, and come up with positive impacts on our community. So it's just a great focus group.
Yay.
Yep, good story. In
Yeah, nice article too, John, by the way.
Yeah, very nice.
Exaggerated.
You're digressing.
No, not this time. Not this time.
Nick, anything else on that?
No.
Okay. Any other questions?
Yeah.
Gary?
Have we researched what the town owns around Greg's?
There's a
Hmm?
map,
Yeah, we looked at the tax map.
very clear map.
The tax map?
Mhm.
We actually have like an old survey map by Vermont Railway as well. Of that
No, I
whole
mean
area.
around Greg's,
Mhm.
Yeah.
on our right-of-way.
Yes.
Because we're looking for some more right-of-way, if we could possibly get it for the sidewalk.
Yep.
And I told you what Phyllis told me.
Yep.
That the tax, somebody may be paying taxes on land that they don't have control of. I mean, that happens all the time. And I'd like to find out just what we own there, because that was the town shed at one time.
Yeah.
And municipal property cannot be taken over by adverse possession, which may mean that we own more right-of-way there than we think we do.
So would you like the town attorney to do a title search?
Yeah, what do they do? Go back 25 years? I mean, it's gonna have
But
to-
before that, are you thinking around Greg's Market itself?
Yeah,
Yeah.
on the
Yeah.
Exchange Street side.
Right, right.
There supposedly is
Take
one
a look
there,
at
right?
that.
There's one right away
Kathleen's got a pretty long, detailed
Okay,
map
I will.
with the borders on it. See if you think, after looking at that, whether we need to, because I
Well,
think
I
that
don't
spells
want-
out the right of way and everything, and it's got the survey lines on it. It's even
Well-
got the old street name. What was it, Freight Street or something like that?
Yeah.
Before it was Elm Street, which is when it was Public
I mean,
Works.
I've seen that happen too. You know, the lawyer says, here it is, and it gets passed on to this is the line, and the research might prove that it isn't.
Mm-hmm,
It's sort of like
Good
the property
historian
lines
about
in
that.
Middlebury.
yeah.
Mhm.
Could very well be.
So, yeah, I'll come look. Don't engage the lawyer yet.
Hold off on spending any money. All right. Policy Review Committee, Donna and Gary.
I also have it, but whatever.
Okay. We, with Ann's able help, we have come up with a alcohol beverage restriction ordinance that we hope can go to hearing. And I think you have it in the packet.
Yeah, we want to thank Ann. She made, during the month of December, there were extensive discussions with Ann and also with Chris English, and the committee met, and we incorporated all the suggestions that were made. We fine-tuned the final language just to make sure that it was consistent
Mhm.
from beginning to end. We made a couple of adjustments to the actual assemblage permit, which is not a discussion topic for tonight, but we made sure that it did match the changes in the alcohol ordinance itself. And so tonight, we're hoping that the
Do you want to
board
highlight
will
what
approve
those?
the ordinance.
Do you want to highlight what those changes are, or do you want to wait till we have the public hearing?
Whatever your pleasure is, I mean, we could put that up on the board. The changes that have been made from November till today are actually pretty minor.
Mm-hmm.
Do you have it up there?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So on the first page, make sure I've got the right page that I'm looking at. Make sure I'm looking at both. Okay, in section 1, we added language in there, and to preserve the privilege of responsible entities properly licensed or permitted and approved by the Vermont Department of Liquor Control to possess and serve alcoholic beverages on town property during public and private events while assuring the safety of the public and the protection of property. Again, this is consistent language that we're trying to make sure that goes throughout the entire ordinance. Reading down in section 205, change. Entity includes an individual, business, corporation, partnership, unincorporated association, or any other legal organization. Again, clarifying, we use the term entity, we wanted to define what that was. And going over to section 208, there was a problem with maps being cited that were incorrect, and so we've clarified that. The change in there says, control of the town within the village area as defined on map 138, part of a set numbered 138 to 143, titled Town of Middlebury, Vermont, Addison County Regional Planning Commission, 1968, as recorded in the Middlebury Town Clerk's Office, which includes Chipman Hill Park, Means Woods, Battelle Woods, Wright Park, and East Middlebury Recreation Park. Moving along to section 3, section 301. Again, no person shall have in their possession a container having any alcohol, malt beverages, spirits, or beverages while on town property or in any vehicle located on town property unless attending a public event, a public or private event where a permit has been issued specifically authorizing the serving of alcohol, malt beverages, spirits, or beverages on town property. It was important to clarify that because the open container law was in conflict with our alcohol permit. Again, on 401, we substitute the word entity so we're consistent throughout the policy. 402, we amended. At one point, it referred to the second and fourth Tuesdays for select board meetings. And what we wanted to do, they're not always on those dates. We sometimes have exceptions. So 402 says the application shall be filed at least 45 days prior to the event to allow sufficient time for the select board to review the application at a regularly scheduled select board meeting. The 45-day requirement may be waived at the sole discretion of the town manager if, in her or his judgment, the applicant has satisfied the requirements of section 501 of this ordinance and sufficient time remains from the date of submission for the select board to consider the application at a regular select board meeting prior to the event. 501, before the town manager, before submitting the public assemblage permit applications, shall determine whether or not the applicant has submitted a complete and accurate application. The applicant is able to comply with the general conditions of the public assemblage permit, especially in regard to serving alcohol, malt beverages, spirits, or beverages. Adequate arrangements have been made to ensure the safety of the public at large and persons attending the event for the prevention of damage to public and private property. And then 502, the select board may approve with amendments or deny a permit application. At any time, the select board may amend or revoke a permit if it appears that the arrangements or conditions contained in the permit will no longer prevent an injury to a person or property due to a change in the circumstances under which the permit was granted. And then the next one remained unchanged. The chief of police may revoke a permit at any time should the event fail to follow the permit conditions or become a public nuisance. Up to the appeal process, again, keeping the language consistent, an entity may appeal the select board's decision to deny a permit application by filing a written notice with the town manager within 5 days of the decision. The select board will consider the appeal at their next regularly scheduled select board meeting. The select board may affirm or reverse their decision or attach special conditions to the permit at will, in their best judgment, to protect the safety of the public at large and persons attending the event and to prevent damage to public or private property. So all of those things were actually changed with Ian's help to keep a very consistent alcohol ordinance and that goes back to the policy committee. We have an alcohol policy. Now you have an ordinance, a policy, and you have a permit, and all three of them are in alignment.
Great. Good. Thank you.
Could I ask a question?
Sure.
Sure.
So under 501C, where it reads adequate arrangements have been made to ensure the safety of the public, what does adequate arrangements mean? Like having contacted the police
It
department?
would mean that they had, number one, if they had filled out the assemblage permit, all right, that it had been reviewed and that it was considered to be
Adequate,
yeah,
that's what we
and
mean.
that they have insurance,
That they have insurance.
liability insurance, all of those things.
And in the
If there were any
requirements of being approved by the state and
Right.
having whoever's serving is trained.
DLC alcohol server.
Okay. So they don't have to notify the police in advance of the event. That's not part of the,
Part of our usual public assemblage permit
That's part of the
process is
part of
getting
the
a
assemblage.
review by the fire chief and police chief,
okay,
public works if necessary.
Yep.
okay,
That's not the ordinance, that's procedure.
Yep.
okay. Okay.
Thank you, Ann. So if there's no question,
Going back to it, I was,
so the next step would be to warn a public hearing for the new alcoholic beverage use policy on town property.
Right, so I think the first one is to approve the updated ordinance, and then the second one would be to warn a public meeting, possibly at our February 9th meeting?
Yes.
Okay.
Is that a motion? I'll second it.
Okay, I will move that to approve the updated alcohol ordinance. You've seconded it. Okay.
So the motion's been made and seconded to approve the updated ordinance by Donna and seconded by Gary. Those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? And the second motion would be to warn the public hearing for February 9th.
So moved.
Moved by Donna, seconded by Gary. Any further discussion on that motion? Those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
And
Is there anything that we need to be thinking about so that what happened earlier this evening doesn't happen during the public assemblage permit? Is it just sort of a behind the scenes thing, you know, with ID4 property and things like that?
I think that now that's at the forefront of our minds.
Yeah. I was just wondering if it's something that we have to,
Well, you use current procedure, I would think.
right, okay.
Policy procedure,
Yeah.
which includes you,
Having
right?
it in place will help because we're kind of right in that,
We're in the in-between.
kind of in
Yeah.
a limbo of, like, a
What to do.
change is
Right.
being made.
Right.
But, and I think the public assemblage permit was sort of approved, indicating that they wanted to have it catered and have alcohol, but that wasn't necessarily taken into account or ever brought before the board.
Yeah.
And then the catering actually didn't come in until much later.
Right. It's that awkward in-between stage. Okay.
Mhm. Anything else, Donna?
No, I have nothing else.
Gary?
No.
All set? Okay. Let's move on to the Planning Commission.
Well, maybe not, yeah.
Planning Commission meeting of January 18th. Kathleen?
Okay, the Planning Commission has forwarded to you a statement of consensus principles regarding solar siting. And that is included in your packet. There's 7 different principles included. So the Planning Commission voted unanimously at its January 18th meeting to endorse a set of 7 consensus principles regarding solar development in Middlebury that were developed last fall by the Solar Siting Task Force. According to the Planning Commission members, the intent of these principles is to provide information to the Public Service Board about the way the town of Middlebury feels about solar siting, recognizing that large-scale solar development, if not sited properly, poses a threat to scenic and natural resources and the quality of life for residents of the town of Middlebury. The full text is in your packet. Since the Energy Committee was also working on this, I thought it might be appropriate to refer these consensus principles to the Energy Committee for their input and review before being formally adopted by the board and forwarded to our legislative delegation.
I think that's a great idea.
Yeah.
Good suggestion.
Anything else, Kathleen?
No, that's it.
Personnel Committee meeting back on January 18th. Donna, Kathleen, and I, and Chris English, along with Susan and Gary, were both there as well, met to review and discuss the proposal for the additional position that we've got included in our proposed budget. And we spent quite a bit of time talking about the specifics around what we anticipate are going to be the primary functions of the new position, and a little bit of time on where the table of organization might look and go after that. I think we have a much better sense that the primary issue is the responsibilities for facilities planning and maintenance and management, along with the management of all the various projects that are going throughout the town at any given time. Their management, putting out the RFP and managing the contracts, is a piece of our staffing that we're just falling short on. And we spoke, Donna mentioned it a couple of times, which makes good sense. How many cost failures are there within a given year that would have been addressed better and more properly if we'd had the proper staffing to manage those positions? So I'm not wanting to spend a lot of time, and I feel much better about it after the meeting, that we have a better, clearer understanding of what is the goal of this position, and we'll put the finishing touches on how to present that at town meeting. But Donna or Susan?
I think everybody was in agreement at our meeting. We all saw what it was. I think it came down to language and semantics, and how do you explain this to the public, and how are you describing the two positions? And I think we all came out of that meeting much more comfortable that we're looking at. In the operations director, we're looking at day-to-day operations, and in the facilities planning director, we're looking at grant writing and all the planning, future planning timelines, which are then passed off to the day-to-day operations director. So I think we felt pretty good about
we did. Capital
being able to
improvements,
understand and describe
equipment,
it.
facilities.
Yes.
It's just a host of things.
Okay.
Susan?
I was thinking, just going into town meeting, it would be nice if we could solidify our support for it tonight, and just as a board support the position going forward, since we're all in that agreement of it.
Yeah.
It would be great.
Happy to do that if that's what the board would like to do.
Yeah, I'd be
Can
happy.
you take that link down? That link doesn't open for me,
What link?
the review of that
What, the personnel?
personnel committee.
Really?
Do you want the
Here, wait a minute.
Which link are
the
you talking
meeting
about, Brian?
minutes?
On our meeting part, okay, so
This-
let me show you what it does on mine.
Do you want my paper?
You want to look at mine? Well,
Yeah.
you can either take the paper or the secret
Yeah,
line.
you're welcome to.
It
look
opens
at the
here.
paper.
Page cannot be found,
Oh, no.
Really?
yeah.
I'm looking at it right now. It looks
Me
fine.
It seems kind of personal there, but.
It doesn't want me to see it,
Yeah.
yes.
Do you want to look at mine?
Yeah, I'd
You're
love to.
welcome to, yeah. No,
We
it's-
we had also some valid concerns raised by Gary as well that we addressed, and in taking a look at this.
I think the renaming of it,
Yeah,
it's very common to have a plans cell and an ops cell kind of, and I think we were focused on safety at one point, and
Right.
and really that's a minor duty when you really look at the overall impact on their time.
And we didn't want to imply that we weren't addressing safety now either. And
Yeah. I know, it's typically an extra duty or
Right.
something.
Right.
So,
But it does increase costs. Can increase costs
Safety.
safety?
I'm
Oh,
sure.
absolutely.
mhm.
Yeah.
enormously sometimes.
Yeah.
I have a better understanding of what you want to do, but I think it needs to be fleshed out much more than it is now before I would support it.
Well, I'd be happy to make a motion to support the Public Works functional realignment position, knowing that we'll work out more of the details as we go forward.
is there a second to Susan's motion?
I
I'll
second.
second it.
Second by Donna. Discussion? Laura?
The only
Do you have a question?
question is the intent is to get is to have us
Yeah.
support it prior to the town meeting.
I think it's
Yeah.
good.
We still have,
Yeah.
what, 2 more meetings before
Yeah.
town
Yeah.
meeting?
Right, but we have approved a budget which includes the funding for this position in it.
Yeah.
Yep.
Tracking.
And so this is additional, although we did several meetings ago when this first came up back in, was it September or whenever it was?
September, yeah.
The board endorsed it at that time as well.
It's an endorsement to move forward with, still adequate time to refine it.
Yeah,
Yep.
okay.
Yep.
Yeah, no, I think that's fair.
And it'll come through more details as it comes.
So
Until you write the job description, which I think is
Mhm.
part of what the part of the problem in supporting it, I think, to Gary's point, okay? We have generalizations that we put in here that I think are pretty clear. We understand that day-to-day operations is in one bucket and planning's in the other. Until you have it passed at town meeting,
Well, these are
I don't think you're gonna
questions
write, I know we're gonna get
we're
the
gonna
questions,
get.
I agree with that. I'm just simply saying that some of it, I think that the support data that was in our packet tonight goes quite a long way to helping with that.
Mhm.
But the job description can't be developed until after you actually have or shouldn't be developed until you actually have an approval, be a complete.
I feel comfortable explaining the details of what we're looking to do, and
me
obviously,
too.
people have to make a decision one way or the other whether they want to support it or not, but it really is, when you look at the burden of work for the few people that we have doing this, yeah, it's extra money, but the complicated projects that this town's involved in at any given time, and when you got just a couple of people that are trying to manage all of it, how many issues are going to pop up where we end up paying money to resolve them down the road, are there going to be before we figure this out? And
I'm in agreement with that, some of that. But I have an issue with the safety thing that seems to be a selling point, that we've lost a lot of money because of safety. And I think maybe we should have a executive session on this before I'm comfortable with.
That's fine, but I would the only thing I disagree about is I don't think the safety issue to what your first point was is the biggest part of this. I know we've lost money, what I'm simply saying is that in terms of the operation, one person can't do the work
I agree.
anymore, and we need two people.
I agree.
And how we divide that bucket, we've got an well, I wouldn't call it arbitrary, I think we've got a pretty clear way of dividing it at this point. And safety is only one aspect of it. I think the other aspects in terms of day-to-day operations are probably, and
But
planning.
I've heard safety mentioned often.
Well, we did mention it, because what we said is anyone who's involved in day-to-day operations has the responsibility of incorporating safety procedures into whatever they're doing, and whoever the manager is, whether, by department, whether it's wastewater or water treatment or highway or parks and rec, within every department, it's everyone's job to look at safety. It's not one person's job.
it is now.
And it is now.
But what's
right.
different that I see, Gary, and I don't look at safety as being the issue that's driving this at all.
No, I don't either.
We started by moving the the Public Works Committee into facilities management as well. And that's a huge shortcoming when you look at all of the infrastructure the town now possesses and owns and has to maintain. And you look at all the projects that we put out to bid and then have to be managed, and where's the staff to do that? There isn't anybody.
Okay, I agree with a lot of that. And, but I'd still like to have a broad discussion about all of these areas.
We can do that. We can meet again. Personnel committee could meet again and talk about it again.
No, I mean, in the select board meeting.
Okay.
He wants executive session.
I don't know that it qualifies for an executive session.
I don't think it does either.
I don't think
Yeah.
unless
So,
you have
if
some
there's-
sort of specific,
It's about personnel.
well,
How much-
Specific personnel?
it has to be.
Maybe.
You have to have a specific personnel issue that you're,
Yeah.
if that premature general knowledge would clearly place the select board at a substantial disadvantage. If it's just,
If we're not,
if it's just
we're
an
looking at creating a position,
yeah,
not
if it's an
dealing with a
uncomfortable
personnel issue.
discussion, then we still have to have it out here, unless it puts us at a substantial premature general knowledge.
I see what we're doing at this point is we're endorsing support of the concept, and then there's obviously details and refinements that we all are going to be able to contribute.
And we certainly did the same thing for the Middlebury Business Development.
Yeah,
Jamie's
and
position.
I see a similarity. I see a similar path to that. So I think what you're asking for makes a lot of sense. Is we endorse moving forward, and we're going to refine it to get it right.
And to Gary's end, if there are specific personnel issues, great, we need to address those, and we can if there are specific concerns about personnel in executive session. But I don't see the position as being one where we're looking at a specific personnel to create a position for or resolve an existing personnel problem. It's either we can explain and justify the position properly, or we can't.
Right.
Well, okay, if we define it well, I'll support it.
Okay.
haven't seen that yet.
Anything else anyone wants to add? So we do have a motion on the floor that's been made and seconded to reiterate our support for moving forward with the creation of the new planning position. Any further discussion?
Is it facilities planning or is it general planning?
Well, facilities is part of it.
Would be part of it.
I think facilities is part of it, but isn't, I mean, like the bridge project wouldn't have been a facilities, so I agree with that, we need a plans set
Right.
person, and we need an ops guy, or girl.
Right.
Thank
Yep.
you.
But I think,
It's not,
I'm not,
Oh,
I'm
okay.
not,
I think you're right.
I'm not
Actually,
fully
yeah.
supportive of, I support the creation of the position, but I think it needs to be even more general. I like how we're moving, because the personnel committee's made it more general than what we started.
right.
And I think that's where we need to head.
Well,
But
for
why
Part
would
of
they
the-
not be
Part of the issue about the planning director title that's already taken in Jennifer.
Okay.
Right.
Well, and that's, I'm not a part of the personnel committee, so I'm
Yep,
just,
yeah,
Yeah.
Right.
but
I hear you.
so, I don't know, I guess I would have
It
those questions.
would
But I
be
would
interesting to come up
continue
with a different name, but
we
you're right,
can-
it's not just facilities.
It's
No,
not
you're
just
right, right.
facilities.
You're right, and that's been the problem all along, has been the semantics. Our committee has had the same problem all along.
Yeah.
The more, when you put a name in here, when we were describing it, the more specific you got, the more it was hard to understand. And it's not limited to facilities, you're quite right. It isn't.
Yes,
So
right.
we keep trying to find good titles.
We've crossed that out 3 or 4 times.
Yeah, we
Have
did.
you? Okay.
Yeah, we did.
I wasn't
Yeah.
privy to the conversations.
No,
and
absolutely.
I can support a planning person and an ops person.
What is her
and how
title
we-
exactly,
yeah,
Jennifer's?
You know, I'm just seeing it, I couldn't open that page for some
Director
reason.
of Planning and
so.
Zoning.
Director of Planning and Zoning.
But I see a lot of
Director of
stuff.
Planning and Operations.
I
No,
think,
no, you can't.
I
You're
think,
duplicating it.
No,
I
it
think
talks
once,
about the
We're
growth.
gonna figure out a name
once
that
the
doesn't-
job descriptions
yeah.
come together, then the title will come
Yeah.
together.
Right.
We're,
We-
we're trying to make it
We
fit the other
do
way.
need to steer away from,
Right.
focusing on one thing, like
Right.
facilities, or just planning, because we don't want to confuse the issue. But if we can elaborate on the responsibilities of that position more, and that's what we focused on at the meeting.
How about project planning director? Could be a project for anybody.
Personally, in my experience,
As
the more-
opposed to naming a department. I think
the
what we
more
can't do is
names
name
you
a
have, the
department.
worse your job is. It's
Yeah,
like,
yeah.
if you have like,
So that'll be the challenge for us,
Right.
is to come up with the right name
Name.
for the project. But in
Yeah.
the meantime, the responsibilities of that position will be the facilities management. It will be everything from the Public Works Committee, developing that budget for planning, managing the various projects, putting out the RFPs, the request for qualifications for them, procurement, our equipment fund, we moved that in there as well, managing that.
I was just looking through the,
Operations and
You
planning.
name every single department.
Well, the only
and
concern we
you
had there, Gary, is
you gotta have
does
something
it
that
confuse
sort of
us
covers
with
all those departments.
planning and zoning?
I think we fundamentally know
Yeah.
what we want,
Yeah.
what this
Yeah.
position is.
Right.
And
When you look
this
at
is
that list-
obviously part of the whole refinement process.
Yeah.
It's every single
What we
one
want
of
to
those
call
things,
it,
it's the
and
planning
the
person.
details to be shaken out.
Yeah.
But at this point, it's just, we're being asked to endorse
Yeah.
moving forward with it, and that makes good sense.
So hopefully you understand the concept that we're working with anyway, better.
yeah.
Any other discussion?
Tracking better now.
Okay, good.
Thank you for the loan.
you're welcome. Do you want to keep it, or are you good?
I'm gonna ask Kathleen if she could just email it to me, because I
Okay.
can't open it on my computer.
If there's no other discussion, then those in favor of the motion, please signify by saying aye.
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 Thank you, Gary.
Aw, thanks.
No, well, you're not supposed to do that.
We are unanimous. Good discussion, thank you.
Yeah.
Nice going.
Keep
All right.
working at it.
Town office rec facility, Nick.
No, it's my turn.
Rapid Nick.
Do we have a picture?
Oh, yeah, we have.
Pictures tell a lot.
Oops, sorry. Hit the wrong thing, Nick, sorry.
Well, while she's looking at the pictures, I actually had a nice tour today of the town office and the recreation facility, and progress is happening. So if you look at the drawings on the back behind Brian and Laura, this is where it's going. is what it's looking like. It is good progress. It's on schedule for completion toward the end of February. At this point, the heavy mechanical, electrical work has been complete. This is actually the second floor looking toward the planning office where Jamie and Jennifer will be located up in the area. You see finished colors are being put in place. A lot of the mechanical final fit-up work is underway. The flooring, the carpeting's actually just arrived yesterday, so that's going to be going on down here soon. There's a little bit of a delay in just getting some door frames coming in from suppliers, but Breadloaf says they'll find them, so it's moving on schedule. One of the things that's very interesting in talking to Dan is that Dan Heath, the superintendent, is how warm this building is staying with the insulation. They have a small little portable heating unit that's in there, and he says it's only coming on about 4 or 5 times a day. That's even with all the doors open while the contractor's moving in. This building is very warm, and it's really pretty impressive the way the build quality is. Expecting to have the certificate of occupancy inspection at the end of February, so that's moving on really nicely. Recreation facility, this is the inside of the new gym. It is very close to completion. Within the next 1.5 to 2 weeks it will be done. We actually received the certificate of occupancy last week for the building, so this is just kind of the final fit-up stages. Again, a building that's very well insulated, very warm. It's just an incredibly inviting space. I think if we would have had a ball today, we probably would have had a pickup game in there. It was just so nice. This is the main corridor that comes in, so as you enter into the space, the gymnasium is off to the right. The multi-purpose room is the one where the door is open, and Terry's office would be actually just to the left of where I'm standing right now. So it's coming along nice. The team rooms are beyond that. They're very nice. It's you see a lot of the flooring is down. Flooring covers are still there. It's being cleaned up, but very close to the end of that, so that we can start moving into that one very soon. It's really nice to see this, and it's really good quality workmanship. So something we're all very proud of to see happen.
You pick the colors?
I didn't pick the colors.
Who picked those colors?
Worked with a group, a subcommittee of the town offices planning.
Tigers, and that looks like Yellow Jackets.
Well, we have the tiger colors in the locker room.
You do?
Yeah.
Okay.
Oh, yeah.
Good. Oh, do they ever? Oh, yeah, yeah.
Is that the visitors' locker room?
Yeah,
Actually,
we've got to
both.
keep
It's
something.
strategy.
Actually,
As
both,
comfortable
yes.
as you can.
Yeah, yeah. And the visitors' locker room is half the size. So.
Yeah.
But anyway, no, it's coming along really nicely. We're going through some of the different contractor contingency notes right now, so, but we're well within budget, so we're doing really nice. And I guess there's an item in front of you too that's a draft memorandum of understanding. This is something I actually wasn't involved with, so I may defer a little bit to Ann. But as I understand, is what we have is a need for some additional record storage, archival record storage space, dry heated space, and the location that's been offered as an option is a 15 by 19 foot portion of it's a central upstairs section over at the Hannaford Career Center. The idea is that it would be leased for a 1-year period with a renewal for 10 more additional years. The renewal could be terminated with a 90-day notice. The town will pay $1,000 a year with adjustment by the Consumer Price Index for the use of this space. So it's sort of the off-site record storage. Are these?
That's not mine.
That's plenty.
That is.
It's all Fred Dunnington stuff.
It's all Fred Dunnington stuff, folks.
I think we're talking a lot of planning and zoning.
That's a lot of
planning and
Okay.
zoning and
Right, then,
other departments, public
okay, so
records,
it's-
which are.
All my stuff is going with me.
I thought
Good.
it was. That's why I'm sitting there. Okay, so it's the downstairs debris field is what it is.
Yeah.
Well,
Until we figure out what to do with it.
This is, we have statutory responsibility to save a lot of the records. And I see this as a multi-step process. One is we need to secure them for now. And we also need to continue to cull through them and digitize them where possible. So over time, we're hopeful that we could shrink the amount we have, but for right now, we do have to plan to accommodate everything that is in a fairly well-organized planning and zoning storage room downstairs. And that's where the dimensions of this room came from, the room we have now with shelves and boxes, and it is 15 by 19. There are some additional other little storage areas we have that will also be incorporated into this. So.
Okay, so my apologies again. I didn't
And,
correct
and we're sectioning off a portion of a larger room.
it. Yeah, if I recall seeing
Use
the
those,
space.
use those woven wire
Right.
cages, basically.
Right.
Yeah, isn't this like a section they built? Is it difficult access or something?
Right. I think it's in a mezzanine, and there's not
Yeah.
fire proper
Right.
coded
Or-
ingress or egress from it.
Yeah, there's a variety of things right on the egress, so it couldn't be used as a classroom space, but it can be used for this storage. Okay, so that's what it's for. So the idea is that as a place to relocate the planning and zoning records for some period of time while we figure what to do with them and comply with the statutory requirements. So this has been past the town attorney. And
He had some comments, and we will have
had some
to
comments.
get clearance from the Department of Education about the use of the school property.
Right. But this is a mutual, a memorandum of understanding that the parties will work together, prepare and obtain necessary approvals for a formal lease agreement. So that's what we're really asking for is
So is that your motion?
that is my motion.
Second.
Motion's been made and seconded to approve an MOU between the town of Middlebury and the Patricia Hannaford Career Center for the archive storage of town records. Any further discussion?
Should we have it that it's contingent on the approval of the Department of Education?
I think that's probably implied.
It's already in there?
It's,
Yeah.
it's
okay.
implied in the, all the necessary.
Okay.
to do with it.
Just saying.
Yeah.
Okay.
Does the Career Center have space for other storage that may be desired by others?
You'll have to ask them.
How did you come to the Career Center?
You thinking of Chief
Did you-
Hanley, or?
Fred Dunnington, former Director of Planning and Zoning, interviewed everybody with spare space in Middlebury over the summer and came to this conclusion and recommendation for us.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. Knowing Fred, there
Since it
wasn't-
was his stuff, it was fair that he do this.
Knowing Fred, there was not a stone unturned.
We do have other storage issues that we're trying to
Yeah,
work out.
I was just wondering if
so-
they do and whether
Yeah.
we
Good
could
point.
direct them. Okay.
Thank you. Any other discussion on the motion? Hearing none, those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? We're 7 in favor and none absent. Anything else, Nick?
No, that's it for now. No, we're looking good. We're making good progress.
When Gary and I did a tour, was it last Friday, Gary?
Yeah, right
They were just about ready to start firing up the heat source pumps. They were,
Yeah, they're gonna test them.
yeah, which are pretty exciting, so,
Was it Monday or?
I think so,
next day?
yeah.
Oh, that was Thursday. We were there. They're gonna
Thursday,
test it
yeah.
Friday.
So the back of the building has the beige on the second floor there? Is that for an aesthetic reason? Okay. I didn't know if it had another function.
No, it's aesthetic. It's aesthetic.
Yeah.
But
Looks
what-
good.
But what really is impressive is just how warm that building is. It's
It's tight.
It is tight.
Approval of the check warrants, Gary.
I was in the town offices this afternoon looking over the check warrants. This is the period of January 13 through January 26. Total expenditures were $1,170,583.14, which are comprised of accounts payable of $1,079,071 and payroll of $91,582.43. I move approval of the check warrants. They were in order.
Second.
Motion has been made and seconded to approve the check warrants as reported by Gary. Any further discussion? Those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
We are 7 in favor and none absent. I got it right here. Yeah. Thank you. Managers report, Kathleen.
Yes, so briefly, you have in your packet some information about stormwater management at the Middlebury Airport and groundwater protection provided by engineers for the Agency of Transportation in connection with their application for an expansion at the Middlebury Airport. And you also note the minutes of the Middlebury Ad Hoc Tree Committee that met on January 14th with consultant Mark Dunteman to discuss potential liabilities associated with maintaining the town's tree inventory. Mr. Dunteman is scheduled to brief the Select Board on this issue at its February 9th meeting. And that's all I have.
Any questions for Kathleen? Just a quick comment on the tree warden thing. I don't know if others have gotten a sense at all from that, but I am a little concerned that it seems to be taking on a bigger role than we had anticipated. I did get some correspondence from Larry Katz, our assistant tree warden, who's done a lot of work over the last few years, and is feeling a bit frustrated with some of the direction coming from the committee. And the potential liability issues and cost and staff time involved in this, I don't think we anticipated this was the direction it's going in. So I think it's going to be good to have this discussion in a couple of weeks to find out where they are, in fact, looking to go. But just from my perspective, in hearing from Larry, I became a little concerned. And speaking with Kathleen, too, I know that she's spending an awful lot of time on this as well, more than I think we anticipated. So just to make everybody aware of that.
Larry's been a great resource.
Yeah.
So if there's a red flag being raised, I think we need to see what it's about.
I recall Dean at one meeting said I should be more careful about putting some of the trees because they just get in the. They got to be so far away from water or sewer lines and stuff. And I guess that's a communications issue between Larry and Public Works.
Right.
But they don't.
Larry works well with Dan, so I don't know where that's going. Yeah.
You don't need too many people sticking their oar in the water.
Okay, anything else for Kathleen? Member concerns? Susan?
Yeah, I spoke with Jim Kay, who is the pilot for Martine Rothblatt, who's building a hangar on the at the airport, and he had some updates that he wanted to give out to the neighborhood and to the board. And they have decided to delay building their hangar until 2017, which will coincide with the airport upgrade work. They're hoping that the work will be less disturbing to the neighborhood at this point because it'll be part of the expansion construction, so it'll just be all sort of absorbed. They've also moved the location of their proposed hangar from the southwest corner of the airport to the northwest corner. And they're hoping that this can reduce the noise impacts since they won't have to fly over the rest of the airfield for each arrival and departure, especially with the helicopter. They also have decided not to build the jet fuel farm and instead will be fueling their helicopter and plane in Burlington. They don't want to take on that additional responsibility and financial burden. So that's it.
Good. Thank you. Ross? Do you have a member concern?
I just wanted to say, as a member of MANA, the Middlebury Airport Neighborhood Association, we've been, I've been very, and I think the group has been quite impressed with Martine Martin and her group and their sensitivity to the concerns of the
That's
people
great.
in the area.
Good point.
Appreciate that.
Good to hear. Thank you.
They've been very open about their communications, and when things change, they just really are focused on, they've met with several of the neighbors and gone out to their homes and checked it out, and it's nice.
Yeah, yeah, she heard through someone else that Martine actually drove around, and her comment was, "Oh, I can see why they'd be." She didn't realize the houses were so close to the airport. You know, from the airport, you don't see it.
Yeah.
And I think that drove some of the changes that they've made, so it's nice.
Good response. Donna?
No, I have no comments.
Brian?
Pass.
Laura?
Not tonight.
Gary? Nick?
Not a chance.
Okay. Once it hits 10, boy. Okay, we do have a brief executive session that is needed. Let it roll, Susan.
In accordance with Vermont's open meeting law requirements, I move that the board find that premature general knowledge of the consideration of legal matters would clearly place the select board at a substantial disadvantage because the select board risks disclosing its litigation strategy if it discusses the legal matters in public.
Second?
Second.
Those in favor of Susan's motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you. Number
I
2.
further move that the board enter into executive session to discuss legal matters under the provision of Title I, Section 313A1 of the Vermont statutes.
Second to that motion. Second by Nick. Those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Very good. See you on February 9th.